Good morning, everyone, and can I welcome you to this Committee of Development Control, Committee A of Mid-Suffolk District Council. May I first of all remind you of some of the domestic arrangements for today. Please can I ask you ensure that your microphones are muted when you're not speaking, that you do not interrupt other speakers, and members are reminded not to use the messaging chat function during the meeting unless it is to report a pecuniary or non-pecuniary interests or to notify the chair that you wish to make a proposal. Members are reminded that they should not have alternative communication lines open, i.e. Teams chats, and that if you are contacted by a third party during an application, you should bring this to the attention of our legal advisors, please. Can you also note that if you are attending the meeting to speak and persistently interrupt the meeting, you may be asked to leave the meeting. Additionally, you'll be invited to speak and ask questions by myself as the chair of the meeting by using the hands up function, and we'll also today be using the electronic voting system for this meeting. If you're experiencing any poor connection issues, in the first instance, please turn your camera off. If this doesn't work, please turn off all incoming video. These options can be found under the 3 dots, which is the 4th item along at the top of the page, which is the main information bar. Can I also remind everyone present this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewings. The whole of the meeting will be recorded, except where there are confidential or exempt items. If you make a representation to the meeting, you will be deemed by the council to have consented to having been recorded. By entering this meeting as a speaker, you're also consenting to being recorded by the council and to the possible use of those sound recordings for webcasting and/or training purposes. The council, members of the public and press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. Just like to run through a few introductions. Today we have Ian Deprez, who's with us, who's our legal advisor. Good morning, Ian.
Morning, Chairman.
We have Robert Carmichael, who's the governance officer. Good morning, Robert. We have Gemma Walker, who's the area planning manager. Good morning, Gemma. And
Morning.
we have Bradley Heffer, Daniel Cameron and Jamie Martin Edwards, who are the case officers who'll be presenting the various applications today, and good morning to you. Just a reminder that ward members may not vote for applications within their own ward at Mid-Suffolk District Council, and therefore ward members have the opportunity to speak. If they're on the committee, they will therefore, in effect, what we used to do in the chamber is cross the floor, so they'll be able to speak, ask questions and participate, but not vote in the end. The final application before us today is in my ward. Therefore, at that point, I will step down from chairing the meeting and hand that over to Dave Muller, the vice chair. Okay, so I'm now going to move on to the agenda, please. Do we have any apologies for absence and substitutions? So first of all, I need to ask the governance officer for a roll call of members.
Thank you, Chair.
Apologies for absence, please.
Oh, thank you, Chair. So if I just go to our attendance. So this morning we have apologies from Councillor Rachel Eburn and Councillor Tim Passmore, and Councillor Stringer is substituting for Councillor Eburn, and Councillor Haddingham is substituting for Councillor Passmore. And as per our attendance sheet, everyone is present this morning, Chair, with the exception of Councillor. I think Councillor Stringer might have just got into modern.gov, actually. I think that might have just missed it because you've just gone green on my screen. So thank you all. We are all present. I'm afraid you're on mute, Chair. Sorry.
Thank you. I'll try not to do that again. Can I ask, agenda item number 2 is to receive declarations of pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest by members. The only item I'd like to just point out is I am the county councillor for the Debenham, which is one of the applications, but that's obviously just for interest. Anyone else wish to declare anything? No? Okay.
Lobbying.
Yes, we're coming on to that. That's the next item, agenda item number 3, declarations of lobbying.
Yes.
Now, I suspect we've all been lobbied. So does someone just want to name the items, one person, and then we'll all agree? Who'd like to come in?
Yeah, it's the Debenham application and also the Hoxne application, Chair.
Good. Everyone, anything beyond that for other members? No, we're all in agreement. We've all had the same letters of lobbying and correspondence or emails. Thank you very much. Agenda item number 4 is declarations of personal site visits. Any declarations of personal site visits? Councillor Mansell.
Yes, Chair. Following the previous committee discussion on the Hoxne site, which was in the summer, I did actually go there because I'd never been there before, so I made a point of going to look at it. I presume that counts as a site visit. That was back in July or August sometime. Thank you.
Thank you for mentioning that. Yes. We have another hand up, Councillor Mayor.
Yes, as Councillor Mansell, I also visited that site after the initial application. Did you hear me?
Yeah, thanks very much for that. Any other? I'm afraid I'm not getting any hands coming up on my screen at all. So
I went last time, so I don't know if I have to say that again. But anyway, okay. I did. It's
better to say it. Yeah, if you have been. Thank you. Anyone else wish to come in? No? Okay. Thank you very much. Agenda item number 4 is confirmation of the minutes of the meeting that we had on the 11th of November 2020. Are there any points regarding the accuracy of the minutes? No? Okay. Could I have a proposer for the minutes and a seconder, please? Councillor Muller.
Happy to propose, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mayor.
Happy to second, Chair.
Thank you very much. Governance officer will now conduct an electronic vote.
Thank you, Chair. So if members could please go to the bond.gov app and go to the plus sign on the agenda in the top right hand corner and choose the voting and attendance button. When you get there, if you go to the attendance, and I will start the vote, and it should appear in a light blue colour. So everyone else has voted now. So Councillor Stringer, could I please ask for your vote?
So, sorry, the modern.gov says I've voted.
Oh, have you now? Oh no, you have now. Sorry, Chair. Sorry, Councillor. I didn't know that you had got into the voting part as we discussed earlier. So thank you, Chair. That is carried by 7 votes, 0 against with 1 abstention.
Thank you very much. Okay, and agenda item number 6 is to, the minutes of the meeting have been confirmed and will be signed at the next practicable opportunity. Thank you. Agenda item number 6 is to receive notifications of petitions in accordance with the Council's petition scheme. Do we have any, please?
None received, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item number 7 is schedule of planning applications. Before we begin on the first item, I'd like to draw note that application DC 20-00585 has been withdrawn by officers with my agreement prior to the meeting to review and report and seek legal counsel following an appeal decision. Okay, we will stay with the order that's within our papers. So the first item is DC 20-02614, land at Warren Farm, the street, Badwell Ash. I now invite the case officer, Bradley Heffer, to introduce the application to committee. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to make sure first that you can see my presentation. If someone could confirm that you can see.
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
If you could put it into presentation mode, it would just make it a bit bigger.
Yep.
Thanks.
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
Marvellous. Thank you. Yes. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members. You'll recall this item came to the last committee meeting on the 11th of November as a reserve matters application for development at Badwell Ash. If I quickly go through the slides leading up to the revisions, this is an aerial view of the village itself, and you can see the site mark there, and again a slightly larger scale map which shows the built up area, if you can call it that, the village and the site we're talking about. This is the constraints map, which shows that at the current time the site is outside of the established settlement boundary for the village, although it abuts it. And also there are some listed buildings which are coloured not in close proximity but fairly close to the site. The green hatching you can see there is a special landscape area. And this is the red line plan for the site. This is the plan you saw last time, and various elements of this were not considered to be acceptable as identified in my revised report, including instances such as triple parking for the 4-bedroom units as shown on 20 and 21. And there are other instances, plot 3 for example. There was concern about the parking court, which is in the corner here, and also the use of this space and potential ad hoc parking taking place. And there was queries about what was happening over at this point. This is the revised plan. If I quickly go on to a next slide, it shows something in better or larger detail. You'll note that the parking court has now gone. These buildings have been reorientated and have got parking in front, so that sits directly facing that turning head. And in terms of a development change, that sits there quite happily. Obviously, there's parking at the front here, but because it's relatively well tucked behind the bulk of the development, the overall visual impact of that we feel isn't too bad. That's also resulted in the rejigging of the parking on plots 8, 9 and 10. They've all got individual individual spaces within their curtilages, which is again we consider to be an improvement following on from the revision of that. If I quickly flick back to the previous thing, you may recall that when the parking court was being shown in this location, visitor spaces were also being shown. These have now been relocated, so there's 3 on the open space area in the centre and 3 on the larger space nearer the site entrance. We feel again that that's probably a more logical location for visitor spaces, makes it more spatially acceptable for those rather than being located right in the corner, some of them. So that's a convenience that's an improvement as far as we're concerned. The elements that would address the issue of ad hoc parking would be the provision of a knee rail around the open space here and again around the parking space here. So hopefully that would deter any ad hoc parking in that location. If I quickly go back to here, this strip of land here contains part of the Anglian Water Sewer which crosses the site, as you see dashed in red. It's not intended that this would form part of any curtilage, and you can just about see the gates that would lock this. Would make this inaccessible for the public, but obviously Anglian Water employees and the maintenance team for the site would be able to get access to that. So it wasn't, just to clarify, it wasn't ever proposed to push pedestrians out this way onto Langham Road, because this site here, this link through here, if I swap back to the bigger one, this link through here links the site through to the public right-of-way network in the area. So we feel that that's an appropriate way of dealing with that link. And also, of course, if you did push pedestrians out on a bend on a de-restricted road, believe it or not, this, in terms of the safety element of it, we would be concerned about encouraging movements along there anyway. I'll just quickly run through the plans again. As I said last time, the outline application includes a proposed new access into the site, and as part of the access you'll see that there's a new footpath which is being provided, which will link through to the existing provision further down, which is approximately at that point, if you can see my pointer. So there'll be a new footpath going through there. I'll quickly take you through the housing types, which, as I said last time, are very much vernacular approach, which we feel in this particular location in the village is an appropriate stylistic response, and is very similar to dwellings that sit, or newer dwellings that sit opposite, which I'll be able to show you in a second. And this is some photographs of the site as is, including the existing access off of the street. That's the route down, showing the path where the site where the new footpath would go. I've taken the liberty of getting an alternative angle from Google, as it says at the top there, just to show you when that is maintained, that there's sufficient room to get a path through there to link through, which I think was raised as a concern. Again, this is various views across the site, and you'll see that there's the pond in the corner, which are one of the benefits of this scheme. We feel would be getting this back into use as an ecological resource. So that's something that will be an enhancement. This is the wider area of open space, and in the distance you can see newer buildings which have followed the same sort of archaeological detailing as is proposed on some of the units in this current scheme. And very quickly, this is Langham Road, which is lovely rural character, which wouldn't be harmed because obviously there's a lot of screening between the road and the building itself, and that's a view back across the village from Langham Road. So I'll leave you with the revised plan. I don't propose to say any more about that at this point, and hopefully that should be sufficient for the time being. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have Councillor Matheson first, then Councillor Mayer.
Yeah, I have only one question. Section 11 of your report on the planning obligations, I was a bit concerned that the footway, which was almost the last thing you've just shown us, isn't listed as one of the obligations from the outline, but presumably somewhere along or other we're going to condition that to be paid for and provided.
Bradley, do you want to come back on that?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, sorry, Councillor Matheson, that is a condition that was attached to the outline planning permission.
Oh, well,
so
it's not actually wanted to be listed under 11.1 then, did it?
Yeah, apologies for that. There is a list of the conditions that are attached to the outline at the end of the presentation pack, but yes, I should have made that clearer. It is a condition of the planning permission or the outline.
That's all, thank you.
Councillor Mayer.
Yes, thank you. Plots 18 and 19 appear only to have one parking space. Is that sufficient for a house of that size?
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, 18 and 19 are 3-bedroom units. I don't know if you can see my pointer, but there's a space in front of a garage on both of those. So they've actually got 2 spaces for each unit, which is in accordance with the requirement for a 3-bedder.
The garage is 1 space and then a space in front.
That's correct. Yeah, yeah.
Every other house has 2 spaces and a garage.
Well, I think where you've got instances of 3-bed units, for example, these ones, for example, sorry, number 4 is a 3-bed unit. That's got a space and a garage there. Right. And 8, 9 and 10, and some of these which are 3-bed units have got 2 spaces as well.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Mansell.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to ask about the end of the road stub where it meets the link to the public footpath network. I presume that is intended to be a sort of reversing bay for people who've gone in forwards into parking spaces. It's also access to the footpath. Is there going to be any markings on the road to discourage parking in that space to allow manoeuvring of vehicles and pedestrian access to that footpath link?
I think that this area you're talking about here, Councillor, I think that that you're quite right. That is intended to be a turning head, and obviously, if you're using these spaces, you would expect to actually use that part right up to there in order to manoeuvre your vehicle. As that's a public road, as that's that main road going through there, it would be kept clear of vehicles. I would have thought, just for the the practicality of being able to use the turning head, because there's no need for anyone to park over here if they've got their on site parking. But
something I think we can check with the applicant, Councillor Mansell.
Yeah, can I just come back? I mean,
yeah, of course.
often there is no need for people to park in obstructing footpaths, but they still do it. So I think not having a need and having something to discourage people are two completely separate items, but maybe we can come back to that.
We can ask the applicant if you want, Councillor Mansell. Councillor Field.
Yeah, just a couple of points. I noticed that in the report in para 2.2, it still talks about a parking court. Presumably, and I think I noticed as I went through, there seemed to be a couple of other references to the previous application. I presume the drawings override any such comment, so it's very clear, is it, what we're discussing? That was one thing. And the second thing, perhaps, I noticed that in 6.5 it talks about air source heat pumps, energy efficient lighting, etc., and a high grade of energy efficiency, A/B, whatever that means. So there's two questions. One about the ensuring that it is the drawings we're following, not the words in the report, in those few areas of difference. But the other one is that those environmental issues, like air source heat pumps, don't appear to be anywhere in the recommendations, in the conditions. So are they adequately covered to ensure those things actually get delivered?
Thank you, Councillor Field. Bradley.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. Yes, the report that was produced last time was produced in full again, and has basically been topped and tailed. So references to parking courts within the previous report are obviously now superseded by what you're looking at on this current drawing. There is no inclusion of a parking court. And again, if that's caused confusion, apologies for that. In terms of the issue with the 6.5, I think that we're suggesting that the sustainability issues that are raised in that are addressed as part of a condition, so that we would have further control over the actual way that works in practicality.
Where is that condition? I didn't notice it. Did I miss it?
I think it's possibly summarised at the end of the report.
Page 48 detail.
48?
No, can I say the recommendations are on page 27, not 48. That's the old one. Page 27.
Brad, there is a submission of a scheme for water, energy and resource efficiency measures, but to say during construction, should that be during construction and ongoing rather than just simply construction?
Yeah, well, I think that in the case of this one, there was the outline planning permission which was granted, which has that condition on it. But that missed out, the outline condition missed out the construction phase. So to tighten that up, we've imposed a sustainability condition on the on the reserved matters approval as well.
Okay, so it is covered.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Thank
for
you.
Sure. Okay.
Councillor Matheson.
Yeah, I was just going to raise the question about that condition. Where, if we got to the point of nearly approving it, actually, but
I'm covered that point, John.
I'm hoping that the full detail on page 48 will apply, and the word during is a bit confusing, really. It's a scheme for the lifetime of the development, really, isn't it? So as long as we're all clear about what that condition will look like in detail when it's issued.
Sorry, John, I think you just got to be clear. Page 48 has nothing, so the recommendations before us are only those on page 27 that are before this committee today.
Yeah, Chair, normally the conditions are summarised in those bullet points. And in practice, when the permission's issued, one gets a very, very much more detailed explanation, and page 48 seems to be, and similarly, no doubt there are other pages that would be the detail of other bullet points. So I'm just making sure that we are getting the full recommendation from the consultee.
Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, if I could just add for Councillor Matheson's information in the agenda on page 71. There's the condition number 15, which deals specifically with water, energy and resource efficiency measures during the operational phase of development. So there is that imposed
That's the
already.
outline.
Yeah. And then the one that I've summarised in the papers today in relation to this report relates purely to the constructional phase.
I see. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Right, I don't have any other hands up on my system. Anyone else have any questions? Nope. Okay, so we'll move on. So as we don't have a representative of the parish council, we don't have an objector or a supporter. I'll now ask the agent, Graham Bloomfield, to speak. Mr. Bloomfield, you have up to 3 minutes. If you could turn your camera on, please.
Can you see me?
I can't, but can others?
Still got the site layout here.
Yeah, I think we need to take the site layout down first, please, Bradley. There we go. So if you could turn your camera on.
Yeah, my camera is on. I can see myself. If you can see
there you
me.
go. You've just come through. Okay.
Wonderful.
Welcome. And you have 3 minutes, and Mr. Carmichael has the timer going. Over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Chair and members of the Planning Committee. My name is Graham Bloomfield. I'm Land and Planning Partner at William H. Brown, acting as agent for this application. I'd like to say we're delighted to be able to return back to Planning Committee within 1 month of the previous deferral. And I'd like to thank officers at Mid Suffolk Council for all their hard work in allowing us to do so, and also the architects and consultant team from Chatsworth Homes. We consider the scheme in front of you today, as summarised in the officer's report, addresses the points from the November committee meeting that saw the application deferred. I think consistent with the progress of the application as a whole, this demonstrates my client's willingness to work collaboratively with the council and its officers and respond positively to comments that have been made. The current proposals retain the same high quality landscape-led scheme as negotiated with officers that was largely considered positively by members last time around. However, we accept the need to address the points that were raised. The first of these is the removal of the rear parking court, which allowed for a redesign of the southwestern corner of the site, providing more immediately accessible parking spaces for those units, and a further benefit of larger gardens for those affordable units as well. This has allowed the removal of all instances of tandem parking through further tweaks to the scheme. And the visitor parking is now more accessible, and I think a particular benefit is it's now spread more evenly throughout the site, again making it more accessible to all. We provided further clarity on the nature of that parking, confirming that the open space is informal recreation, mainly grass and planting, and demonstrated the measures that will prevent vehicles parking on those spaces, most notably the 0.6 metre high knee rail fencing around the parking spaces themselves. Finally, we've provided clarity on the strip of land between units 16 and 17 as a service strip for Anglian Water that will be locked and accessed only by the management company and Anglian Water themselves. We did consider with officers the potential for a footpath link that was discussed at the previous committee meeting, but for the reasons outlined by Bradley, we didn't think that was there was limited additional benefit in terms of the sort of desire lines from that, and outweighed by a number of concerns with Langham Road, the national speed limit, lack of footpaths popping out on a bend, and there's also a slight drop in levels down to that road as well, plus the removal of a section of hedge to create it. So therefore that was considered, but we didn't move forward with that, but otherwise have looked to address, and work with officers to address all previous comments. We therefore politely request that members endorse the officer's recommendation, and I'm happy to take any further questions.
Thank you very much for that, and thank you. Could you just answer Sarah Mansell's point, Councillor Mansell's point around how you prevent people walking over, obviously if the cars are parked, access to the footpath, and how you're going to stop people parking in that turning area, because it could become tempting.
I mean, I think that the point is that turning head is obviously is designed almost specifically to access units 11 and 12 and 10. So there is a requirement for that to be kept clear at all times. So as part of the overall management of the scheme and how we demark that surface, clearly we would want to keep that clear, which then has the, so it's for the benefit of the occupants of those units. They need access at all times to those spaces, but that in turn then frees up, it will stop there being vehicles at that end that will stop people getting through to the public right-of-way link. So it's yeah, we'd absolutely want to retain that as open.
Okay, we've got some hands that have come up. So first of all, Councillor Muller.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Bloomfield, just one question. Can you confirm whether or not there are plans to put electrical vehicle charging points in the properties on this development, please?
I think we have a requirement under there's a condition on sort of environmental performance that I think, picking up the discussion, it actually is covered more by the outline consent than the current consent. But I think certainly it's something that we're actively looking at as a requirement.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Councillor Matheson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm pleased to see the air source heat pumps, and I did wonder, have you considered, I can't see them on the plans, including photovoltaic panels to produce the electricity for the heat pumps and indeed the electric cars, which previous questions looking for?
I think the scheme as we've presented at the moment is more focused on the air source heat pumps that would meet the policy requirements for renewables and for reusing energy on site. I suppose the challenge with photovoltaics is they do have more of maybe an external appearance. So at the moment, that's not what we've proposed. We are looking at alternative methods that meet policy. But again, that's something that the detail would be dealt with through that condition on the outline scheme.
Could you perhaps consider offering PVs as an option at the point of sale? Because obviously it's a lot cheaper to put them on during the build than it is to have people come back with scaffolding and whatnot afterwards when people decide that they want to reduce their electricity bills.
Yeah, I mean, I have to be very candid that I won't be, I'm the planning agent rather than the house builder, so I can't make those promises to you, but I'm happy to feed that back to my client.
Pass that thought on. Thank you
very much. Councillor Mansell.
Thank you, Chair. I just back to the road surface, and please forgive me if it's in the papers and I haven't read it. And my memory might be wrong, but I seem to remember from the last committee that this road was going to remain a private road and not be adopted. What is the road surface? Is it going to be the same all the way through, or is it going to be mixed surface, or what? I just wonder whether changing the surface might make people realise it's not a road and it's a turning head or something.
I mean, I think that the general ethos of the scheme is to have a shared surface running through the centre of the site. So the main spine road, for want of a better word, will be a shared surface to encourage, that it's not dominated by cars. And indeed, cars will use it as briefly as possible to access parking spaces and get off that bit of highway. So again, there is a landscaping scheme, a hard landscaping scheme that is conditioned. It's something, if it is a particular concern, we could work with that and look at the materials and how it's that sort of trying to recognise that change, isn't it? And the perception of people that utilising material that suggests you're entering more a sort of footpath and entering the public right of way. Happy to look at sort of options for that. But it would be in keeping with the general ethos that this is not a car dominated black tarmac, that it's for all, it's for walkers, cyclists, etc.
Thank you. Councillor Matheson, I think, is that an old hand? Councillor Field, over to you.
Yes, just to continue the environmental bit. I think the thing that we're trying to ensure is that paragraph 6.5 of the report is implemented, and that includes air source heat pumps, energy efficient internal and external lighting, which is sort of obvious, provision of water saving measures, electric vehicle charging points for each dwelling, except submitted details summarised as follows, and I won't carry on reading because you can all read at least as well as I can, but what I'm seeking to ensure is that somewhere in the conditions, those offers which are part of the documentation we're reading are going to come to fruition. Thank you.
Bradley, do you want to comment on that? I mean, because Councillor Field makes a good point. I mean, that's in our papers under 6.5. And do we take it all those are in the conditions categorically?
I think to avoid any doubt, Chair, the wording that's been identified in the report could be incorporated within the condition to avoid any doubt whatsoever. The other thing I should say, I think it's been raised by a couple of members with regard to electric charging points. Again, on page 71 in the outline planning permission, there's specifically condition 13, they did raise that. So we are looking to get electric charging points across the site, across the development anyway.
Thank you. Could I just point out Mr. Bloomfield did seem to have some doubts on that. So I'm just certain.
It's up to the committee if we want to condition it, Councillor Field. If we go down that route, then that would avoid any doubt.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the agent? No? Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Bloomfield. Okay, next, we now move to the ward member, Councillor Richard Mayer. Councillor Mayer, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I have no comments to make, really. The parish council were keen for the path. The path has been provisioned, and they had concerns over the central area, and that has been protected. So I've no other comments to make.
Okay. Any questions for the ward member? No. Okay. So members, we've had the application before us before. It's now come back to us in a different format. 4 weeks later, it's really up to us to debate, discuss, and to see which direction we go. Who would like to start off? We'll do it by hands rather than calling everyone out. Councillor Stringer, and then Councillor Mansell.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is sometimes when we pontificate on these committees, we wonder if we're actually doing any good. I actually think this is a classic case of a committee adding considerable value to a development. So, frankly, I mean, it's we didn't get there in the first place. Having said that, we are there as a backstop. We are there as a double check, and I feel in this role we've done our job. The parish council's now pretty much on board with this, and I think, frankly, we've got probably as good a scheme as we were likely to get here. So I will personally be voting in favour of this, and would not mind moving approval if that's appropriate. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, happy to take that. Thank you, Councillor Stringer. Councillor Mansell.
Thank you, Chair. I too actually think that this is a much improved scheme over the last time we saw this a month ago, and I think it's very pleasing to see that the developers have been working with our officers to come up with this plan. I think the removal of the rim parking court it makes it a much better layout, and if Councillor Stringer actually made a proposal there, I wasn't sure if he was or not. I'm happy to second, provided we do get those words in about the sustainable energy and water usage.
Thank you. Yes, I did take Councillor Stringer's as a proposal.
So in which case, I'll second it.
Thank you. Councillor Matheson.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah, I'm I entirely agree that we would well justified in saying this isn't quite good enough. I mean, I think it's a pity that the comments of the landscaping, that it would work a lot better with one less dwelling was not accepted. But I think that beyond that, it's all good stuff. I am just slightly going to press again the point that we do get into the conditions between the outline that we've already got and this one, all the recommendations that the sustainability officer has got on page 48 and 49. I think we've covered most of the points that are on there, so it's just a question of getting the details written down. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Field.
Yeah, hate to say the same thing and be monotonous, but I think this does seem to be a good development, and if it does meet the sustainability measures, it's quite forward-looking, and obviously meets favour with the parish council, and seems a decent layout now that we've managed to get some improvement to the parking. So I totally support the application, providing it has, as has been said several times, a condition concerning sustainability. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Field. Councillor Muller.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I too totally support this application and will be voting in favour of it. And again, I would like to thank the developer and the officers for coming up with this revised plan so quickly. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I don't have any other hands up, and I just agree with everything said. It is really good that something comes to committee. We say, could you go away, and we want to defer it for the following reasons, and see it come back. So I echo the points that have already been made, and please do pass on our thanks to the applicant, if the agent could pass that on, because this is a very positive story, which is good to have. Okay, so it has been proposed by Councillor Stringer and seconded by Councillor Mansell. As per the recommendations on our paper on page 27, with the addition of bullet point 6.5 on page 21 being part of those recommendations and conditions, so that there's absolute clarity. Everything mentioned on 6.5 on page 21 is to be included in the recommendation. Are you happy with that, Councillor Stringer and Councillor Mansell?
Very happy, Chair.
Yes.
Okay. So now that's I'll now ask the Chief Planning Officer just to confirm that they're happy with that before we go to the vote, and if so, we will then ask the Governance Officer to conduct an electronic vote.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. That's just what I was going to say. So it's the recommendation for approval on page 27 with the additional wording of paragraph 6.5 in the report. So, yep, that would be the recommendation that we're looking at. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So over to the Governance Officer, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I think I've managed to get that all in quickly enough onto the vote. So hopefully it should now also appear when I start it on. Now, so the vote should now be open. So if members could go to the agenda in modern.gov and the plus sign and go to attendance and voting, and please go and choose your vote. Right, thank you, Chair. That is carried unanimously.
Lovely, thank you very much. Now, members, I'm going to have to make a change. Originally, because the agenda was longer, I assured Councillor Guthrie, who had an urgent appointment this morning, that her item would not happen till at least after 10:30. And rather than just sitting and waiting, I think what we'll do is we'll go straight to the third application, the Hoxne application, just to be fair, because I'm afraid at that point, obviously, oh, you're here. Good. Okay, so we can continue. And is the parish council here as well from Debenham, please? Can we confirm, Robert?
The parish council have chosen not to speak. They've got a representation in the table papers, Chair.
Fine. Okay, so that's fine. So we can continue as planned. Okay, well, that's thanks, Councillor Guthrie, for getting here. And sorry about the obviously we had to withdraw that one application. So we'll move on to item number 7C in the paper, DC 20-02129. So
thank you, Chair.
Over to you.
Okay, same process as Bradley. I'll bring up my presentation, and if someone can confirm that they can view it as well, that would be good. Let's get to the start and full screen it for you. Is everybody able to see the presentation?
We are. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so we have the application before us, DC 20-02129, for land southeast of Low Road in Debenham. It is a full application, and it is for the erection of 18 new dwellings, including 6 affordable dwellings, with the construction of an access from Low Road. If we come in, we have the site location hashed in pink and outlined in orange. We have the Gardeners Road estate to the northwest. We have the Cherry Tree Farmhouse and buildings to the northeast. Then to the rest of the site, and you'll see this as we pull out within the aerials, we have a number of large agricultural field patterns surrounding the site. And there we go, and we can see the rest of Debenham up to the north of the application site there as well. If we come slightly further out, the application site is almost at the R or Y of Cherry Tree Green underneath Debenham there in the centre of your screen. We're not too far from Stonham Aspel. We're roughly equidistant between Stowmarket and Framlingham. And we have the relationship with the other villages visible there as well. I want to come now to the Debenham Neighbourhood Plan, because while the application site is outside the settlement boundary of Debenham, although not for the emergent joint local plan, the allocation in this case comes from the Debenham Neighbourhood Plan. So this is the site allocation plan that accompanies the Debenham Neighbourhood Plan, and the relevant parcel we're looking at is Deb 4. I don't know if you can see my pointer here. It's this parcel of land here. And we have this parcel of land also in green, Deb 3, which is another housing allocation within neighbourhood plan. And as you'll see from the information provided to you in the report, the two go together. I've also, just for clarity, included the text from the Debenham Neighbourhood Plan with regards to the allocation for Deb 3 and Deb 4. The allocation for Deb 4 is repeated in your report, members. But I wanted this to be here for clarity. So if we start with Deb 3, there's 4 hectares of agricultural land to deliver between 60 and 140 new homes, with access to this site to be taken from Ipswich Road. We then have Deb 4, 1 hectare of agricultural land for delivery of 15 to 35 new homes. Issues raised within the neighbourhood plan with regards to Deb 4 include the flood risk at the site frontage, which we'll come to in a moment with the constraints plan, archaeology, and that access should be restricted to Low Road, with only pedestrians and cyclists being able to make access there. This is a site location plan, and then if we come to this constraints map, we have 3 grade 2 listed buildings in the vicinity, the most important of which is Cherry Tree Farmhouse for this site. But in particular, members should be aware of the sort of fuzzy black lines that run across the site frontage. This is part of flood zone 2 and 3 across the site frontage there. If we go quickly into site layout, we have a good degree of planting buffer around the access to the site frontage onto Low Road, and we then have the proposed development of the site coming forward in 3 phases, with phase 1 to cover the frontage of the site and road layout. We then have phase 2 to cover delivery of affordable housing and a number of open market units, and then we have delivery of phase 3, which is the remainder of the site, fully open market. Within that, we have the building layout for you members. The purple and the blue units relate to the affordable housing. They're delivered as 3 2-bed houses and 3 1-bed bungalows. We then have the remainder of the site set out. At the back of the site, we have these red and teal units. These are bungalows. And then towards the site frontage, we have 2-storey units. We then go through the various house types through the plot, starting with the affordable housing and running through the remainder of the plots. Now, within the report, we're clear that the access to Low Road is not as it would be required under the site allocation. Now, in coming to this, there are 2 main areas why this has been pursued at this time. The first is that there is a restrictive covenant on the land subject, the land to the south of the site, laid out in the reports for you. This imparts an overage clause should residential development come forward on that site by 2025, and would effectively see a percentage of the uplift in land value go up back to the original landowner. On this basis, it's considered unlikely that this site would come forward in advance of 2025, and given the likely times in which the site would be built out, it's likely that that might prejudice the delivery of this site. And indeed, if Deb 3 was not to come forward at all, it's considered that this site would be completely undeliverable without an access onto Low Road. Now, in consulting with the Highways Authority, they're content with the access onto Low Road for 18 dwellings. It's likely that were we to see Deb 3 come forward, the Highway Authority would likely want to see that closed up, and I think it's within our power councillors to effect a solution that might see, if Deb 3 comes forward, a solution that might see that access stopped up, say for emergency access only, and for pedestrians and cyclists to make use of that access. There's just 2 further points to note, members. And I'll run us back to the layout, which might be most useful for your discussions. But the 2 points to note are that in the last section of the report, where there's references made to the securing of affordable housing under the provisions of a section 106, it's been brought to my attention by the agent that there is movement at national government level to update the NPPF, and effectively that update would replace the provision for starter homes with something similar provision for first homes. And at present, it appears as though the provision for first homes would be accompanied by a requirement that a certain percentage of affordable units on sites be provided as first homes. So therefore, that would prevent a challenge to the council's adopted policy of 70% of affordable units being provided as affordable rented units and 30% being offered as shared ownership. Several councils in the area have already updated their emergent policies or policies within adopted plans to make light of this, but it's thought that the percentage of first homes delivered would be between probably about 20% and 25%, and that would be required by government. So the only thing to note with that, members, is that we might not be able to achieve the 70-30 split that we normally do, but that would be due to changes in national planning policy that would have to be reflected in the section 106. The other point to note is within your table papers, we have a further representation from Debenham Parish Council. They note particularly that they would want to see pedestrian and cycle access maintained through to the neighbouring site. Within the submitted landscaping plan, we have pedestrian and cycle access provided through this area of open space, so would be provided in that instance. and would be secured by conditions and legal obligations within Section 106. The other thing to note is that the development would bring forward an element of sill, part of which would be transferred to the parish council and could be utilised by them to further their own projects with regards to walking and cycling improvements within Debenham as a whole. I'll leave that there, members.
Okay, thank you. So questions. Councillor Haddingham.
Thank you. So Daniel, have you got any photos of Low Road, like from the access route, from the access, from the entrance?
Yes, I do. Thank you for that. That reminds me. So just before we get to this point, members, I need to apologise because I had more photos, but in updating the PowerPoint presentation, a number of them within the site appear to be corrupted, so aren't going to be visible for you. But this is a view towards Debenham along Low Road from the site access, and this is the view going the other way. At this point, Low Road is probably at its widest point, and there is a scheme within the application to further widen it, although not to a significant degree. But we do have footpath running up the side on the opposite side of the road from the site, leading in both directions, although I would note that this ends slightly further up around the corner. And then obviously as we move round the site, Low Road tightens, and parking on street becomes more of an issue in terms of traffic movement, so back and forth along Low Road.
Thank you. Have you also got a sort of a shot of Debenham so we can just see how Ipswich Road and this Low Road sort of fit in with the rest of the village?
Yes.
You sort of showed something initially, but it wasn't particularly clear.
So we have this, the location plan showing the immediate area, but I think probably this might be better, or we could zoom in slightly. So you've got.
Just want to point out where the co-op is and the main facilities and the leisure centre.
Yeah.
Of course. So we've got the leisure centre up here through the Gardeners Road estate, and then the co-op is located up the main road within Debenham, slightly further. It's not within the shot, but it's roughly where my mouse is pointing. But I'm sure I can be moved to a more correct location by members who might be more familiar with the area.
That is correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thank you.
So the Cherry Tree Pub, as it was, is on the court. Can you just point where that out is?
Yeah. So that's now the veterinary surgery, right? Yeah, so that's on this corner here, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Matheson.
Yeah, I didn't find the flooding constraints map very illuminating or clear, unfortunately, as to quite what was happening there with all these fuzzy lines and so on, especially at that scale. Whether you can get in closer to that, or what are we saying? That
if we just ask,
all the spaces between the two black.
Let's get Daniel just to talk us through it again.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. So at present we have a ditch that runs along the site frontage with Low Road, and that's why we have the black line. So the black lines just show the extent of the area, but effectively the frontage of the site is under parts flood zone 2 and flood zone 3. So within that, if we come to the site phasing layout, we have the extent of the flood zone mapped out with this green line. So none of the development is within the flood zone, and within the flood zone, what is proposed is quite extensive landscaping and flood attenuation in order to lessen that impact. in terms of consultations with the flood and water management team, they're content that what's shown and what would be built out would be sufficient to allow residential development on the site.
So the flood map is showing us a ditch each side of Low Road, is it?
No, so the ditch runs, and it's roughly the line that the
yeah, I've got that one.
The blue line here. So there was a ditch runs along here.
Then another black squiggly line the other side of the road.
That shows the extent of potential flooding.
Oh, they're the edges.
That's the edges. That's it.
The edges.
Okay. Well, I think my key question really then is, what's the provision for pedestrian egress from the development in the event of flooding, which is anticipated to happen from time to time?
No, exactly. So within the scheme of conditions, members, we've included conditions such that our emergency planners are able to give comment. Effectively, what tends to happen is that all the dwellings are signed up to flood alerts, and then depending on whether there is a dry exit from the site or not, the flood risk evacuation plan either kicks in or doesn't kick in. So if there is no dry exit, then the advice is normally to stay in place and wait for waters to recede. And in such situations, make sure that you have the appropriate contact numbers for services you might need to access, emergency services, the power network, gas network, know where the appropriate shutoffs are. But in terms,
I thought when we were dealing with the one up the road from here, that perhaps the chair actually referred to earlier, was it that one where we were insisting that there would be a 1 in 100 pedestrian access to get out provided. I seem to recall it's the one I'm thinking of, and I'm pretty sure it is actually. So this is dependent on the plan rather than having a 1 in 100 dry access. Then,
well, you would have access through to the land behind the site, and the access as it's designed, the majority of it is above either
it is or it isn't. If the majority means some of it isn't.
Well, the problem is that Low Road as it stands is underneath that level.
Yeah,
as I understand it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Field. Sorry, Councillor Guthrie, I noticed your hand's gone up as well. I don't know the order because I only have the attendees come up. So I'll ask after Councillor Mansell, I'll bring in Councillor Guthrie.
Okay. My first points really were about flooding as well. So the real question is, have we met the requirements? On page 179, there's a paragraph headed recommendations, and that's from the flood and water management people. So have we really met that? I assume things like the fact is the culvert big enough to take the flow of water without backing up further has been answered, but I'd like some confirmation, because it talks here about safer escape routes and accesses for emergency vehicles. Just like some assurance that we really have satisfied that, not just skated over it. There's a question further on page 185 in the Debenham local plan, the neighbourhood plan, that talks about any planning application must be supported by a programme of archaeological evaluation. And I think later on in the report that seems to get dismissed. I would just like to be sure that that's been dismissed with good thought, not just ignored. And the final point I would make is didn't see anything like heat pumps and non-fossil fuel requirements in this area, environmental requirements. Have we considered those or not?
Daniel,
So-
do you want to come in?
Yes, thank you, Councillor. So in terms of the ditch at present, there's no culvert over it at present, but would be if the access were implemented. Now that meets the design requirements for the Lead Flood and Water Authority, so there's not an issue there. And in terms of the emergency accesses, we have the conditions and the other points that I already went through with Councillor Matheson. In terms of archaeology, the site has been submitted for consultation with Suffolk's Archaeological Service. They note that they have no record of archaeological finds in the area and don't consider it necessary that an archaeological survey is carried out on the site. So we haven't pulled forward conditions to that end on the basis of that. And with regards to the final point about sustainability, if councillors would be supportive, then we can certainly add a condition in such that prior to commencement we have a scheme of sustainability and sustainability measures, renewable technologies, all those sorts of things submitted by the developer.
Thank you. I'd certainly like to see that.
Thank you. Councillor Mansell.
Thank you, Chair. Following on from the previous question about sustainability, and this is a full planning application, my first question is to do with car parking. There appear to be two terraces on the eastern side, or sorry, on the what my plan is, I don't know which way north is on my plan, but on the end closer to the centre of Debenham. There appear to be some terraces. One of them looks like it does have parking spaces outside the properties. The other one doesn't. Is there going to be any scope for adding EV charging for those terraced houses? And actually, while you've got slide 10 on the thing, it's a pity slide 10 isn't included in our pack, because that I think is a much clearer diagram. So my first question is about parking and whether there's scope for electric vehicles charging points for all the properties. When you showed us the picture of Low Road, there's quite extensive hedging on that side and some trees. Can you say how much of that hedging will need to be removed, and will any of the large trees need to be removed?
Thank you. So in terms of parking spaces on site, yeah, we have parking at the side here for some of the three here, and then parking the other side, and then we have this bay of parking for the affordable bungalows at this side. With regards to EV charging points, the GDPR is quite flexible now in terms of being able to provide those without the need for planning permission. So there's absolutely no problem with those being added at a later date. I think what normally facilitates that in a manner that just makes it far easier is the inclusion of ducting to those parking areas, so that in terms of installation, you go down to the ducting and then run your cables through the existing ducting rather than having to lay fresh cable and ducting yourself. So I have absolutely no problem with a condition that would require the provision of ducting throughout the site for EV charging points. With regards to tree and hedging, yeah, we're putting in an access, and some of the trees and hedges to the site access are going to have to be removed to facilitate that and to facilitate visibility displays. For the most part, that's been kept to a minimum, such that we try and retain as much of the verdant character to the frontage of the site as possible. Where that's not possible and where we've removed things within the rest of that open space to the frontage, we've tried to replacement plant as far as possible in order to offset that loss.
Thank you. Can I just come back with another question that I forgot in my first round?
Yeah, no, please do.
The requirement for the pedestrian and cycle connectivity to DEB 3 whenever it materialises, is that, do we have absolute assurance that that will not become a ransom strip and that will be provided in due course when Deb 3 comes forward. I mean, I don't know how we can secure it. I mean, is that possible to have absolute confidence that that will happen?
Well, I think the way to, so in terms of the landscape layout, we have that provided. We have that provided here. So in terms of bringing that forward, we'll be able to control that through condition and section 106. If there are at all any concerns about bringing that forward in order to make connection through to the site to the south, then I think potentially members might want to give some considerations as to whether they want to see that land transferred to them, in order that when the next site comes forward, there isn't an issue with providing that connection up. Now, there are obviously caveats to that, in that it one relies on the next site coming forward for development, and two, it relies on the developer being willing to work with us to provide that connection. I then think the third point is that if we were going to provide a connection through this site, with regards to the Debenham neighbourhood plan, we want to be sure that there is something in place to allow the stopping up of this access onto Low Road. Because I think probably at the moment, the Highway Authority have assessed the impact of 18 dwellings coming forward onto this site. If we go back to the allocation for Deb 3, I think we're talking between 60 and 140 new units. And I think if we were to look at, the potential impact of between 80 and 150 units on Low Road, then that might be very different. So I think probably the third point would be, can we agree with the Highway Authority to, affect the stopping up of the access to Low Road for everything apart from emergency vehicles?
Can I come in there as well, Councillor? It's almost a bit of a reverse position, in that these houses will have had their permission, they'll be up and running, and it would be potentially the committee's option to refuse planning permission on the southern site if the access through to this site isn't included, because it is, is a neighbourhood plan policy. So as far as this application, we are protecting that option. It will still remain available and open, and as Daniel said, it would then be subject to agreement with Highways as to how we blocked up or prevented at least a car access through this site onto Low Road.
Thanks.
Okay.
I'll bring in Councillor Guthrie, then I've got some follow-up questions on this point. Councillor Guthrie.
Thank you, Chair. My first question was actually lots of questions were brought up, but was, where are all the photographs on this? And my questions are, where are the photographs? There's only 2. That's not really very appropriate for the site and the difficulties this site has, but that's a comment. But my question was, where were all the photographs? And I'll come on to that in my report. And secondly, Daniel mentioned about the changes in the current requirements under the section 106, but are they law at the moment for the allocation of houses? How can that be for this type of thing, and yet we can't use our own JLP or whatever because it's only still in the stages? Could I have an explanation on the housing allocations and the affordables, please? Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Guthrie, I don't know if you heard, but at the start, Daniel said that he's had a corruption on his files this morning, so only 2 photos were showing, even though he had many more.
Yeah, no, I did hear that, but
yeah. Thank you.
No, apologies for that, and obviously, it is difficult for committee to be fully appraised of a site when something like that happens. Slightly unavoidable, and I can only offer apologies and try and make sure that save them in 2 places and avoid the corruption of them later. I mean, with regards to the point on, I assume we're talking about the changes to affordable housing. Normally, when the government makes changes to the MPPF, they're just published as an update, and there's no sort of process to go through in terms of checking or verifying them. It's just offered out as an update, and that is then from that point becomes part of the MPPF. The only reason I bring it up for members to be aware of is that that is an expected publication, and in terms of the process in completing and signing a Section 106, there is a little bit of a delay. So it is just in terms of if that update to the MPPF were to come out and be published and be part of what we need to look at in terms of preparing the Section 106, we might need to just look at and temper expectations in terms of what we're legally allowed to secure for the affordable housing. And it was just offered for information, really, because at present time I don't have a time frame for that, although since the publication of the white paper on planning, this appears to be the point that the government wants to push first through the doorway into the MPPF, as it were. I think a lot of other points that they want to take further time on and ponder, but this seemed to be something that they were keen to progress and bring forward.
Did you want to come back, Councillor Guthrie?
No, he's made it clear to the committee members who'll be making the decision on that. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks. Can I just ask some questions then, please, of the case officer? So firstly, so the access through to Low Road, we're talking about introducing a way to get that blocked up, subject to the other access being coming through. But how do you make sure that someone who's moving into one of these houses is fully aware of that? Will that come up in a search? Because they might be in for a shock to suddenly discover their access that they think is the access to the site is suddenly no longer available. So how does that get in actual process and reality? So someone is moving in not under false pretenses. Secondly, how could one of the questions has been around legal obligation to allow and provide pedestrian and cycle access across the site so that you can come in from effectively what will in the long term be three ways. But obviously you've talked about the one at the bottom end of our picture now. How can that be secured, and will it be secured so that it actually is provided for and does stay as being a legal obligation to have that access? How does that work? Can you just explain those two?
Yeah, so I think there are, so if we go to the point of the access, and we'll come on to the footways and cycleways, with regard to the access, yeah, we could have something easily on our documents in terms of an informative that would give direction to that. We obviously have the provisions within the neighbourhood plan, but I take the point. It is difficult to make sure that everyone purchasing a unit on that site would be aware of the potential for the restriction of the access. And
the access will be a far longer and tortuous route to the site when that's blocked off for some of the residents.
Yeah, that would be the other point. I mean, that is how the site was envisaged to work within the Debenham neighbourhood plan. That this would effectively be an addition to the site to the south. But I think probably at the time there was no notion that there was a restricted covenant on that site, and that actually the sites would be coming around almost in reverse order to how they envisaged it when they were drawing up the neighbourhood plan.
So. Sorry, can I just follow up? So is there any way that can be overturned? So if permission is granted on that basis of that being closed up, is there any way that can be overturned, or is that absolutely set in stone?
I think we would need to. I think members would want to retain some flexibility for the council, just in order to secure. If we don't have. If the site to the south doesn't come forward, we'd need to retain the access to Low Road. We'd want to retain a highways access there, and at most we would only be dealing with 18 units coming out onto Low Road, which the Highway Authority have assessed and is content with. I think if we were to see Deb 3 come forward, and we were able to connect this site up with Ipswich Road, then we need to bring forward the scheme to close up the access onto Low Road, because what would effectively happen is that you would have between 80 and 150 units all potentially being able to use that Low Road access. I mean, and I think probably what we would want to do in that situation is go forward with a scheme to block off that road. But I think that would all be within, if members were content to take the area of open space as a transfer to the council, we could then own that area of land. So we would then be in control of what happened to it and the provision of a link through to that site. And it's only with agreeing that with us, which would be within members' gifts, and then the closing up of that, which we would then be in control of the timing of. So effectively we would say, well, we won't close this off until the link through is provided, but once a link through is provided, we will have a period whereby within, say 3 months or 6 months, depending on the timescales that the Highway Authority can work to, that is then closed off to all but emergency vehicles.
Okay, one other question, because I've got other people. So is it common for Mid Suffolk to want to take over land? I thought we were trying to do the opposite and reduce liability.
No, yeah, so I think that is the case. Yeah, in terms of areas of open space, we definitely want to see those retained by management companies or by the developer for maintenance. But I think probably in this instance, and this is something the members will need to judge for themselves, there is potentially a benefit in taking the land or having option, I think, on the land secured within a Section 106, just to be able to then facilitate that access through to the site to the south if that comes forward at a later date. I think that's something for members to be aware of, but I think, as you say, Councillor, that there is a programme within the council at the moment to not be taking on new sections of land and to see those retained by the developer and maintained at their expense rather than ours.
Yeah, can I come in there?
Yes.
I'd probably suggest that might be something we bottom out through the Section 106 process. There strikes me as various options as to how we could have that come forward. As Dan said, an option on the land, a process for call-in, various requirements. I'm sure Ian could provide us some more information if members need that. But essentially, I think we're saying we can and will secure an access through this site to, is it Deb 3? If I'm wrong, Dan.
I think it's Deb.
And we can close off the access to Low Road. That would be in the control of the Highways Authority, so that would all be within sufficient control, and that we could finalise those details in the Section 106 if members are happy with that. And equally, as I mentioned earlier, potentially if the southern site was to come forward without this, would that be possibly a reason for refusal at that time? That could be something that's given due consideration under that, given the neighbourhood plan policies. So I think from my point of view, we're securing as much as we possibly can whilst allowing the houses to come forward. And it's whether that's sufficient balance for members to do so.
Thank you. Councillor Matheson, over to you.
Thank you. Yes, officers and indeed the chair have extensively gone back and forth across the main question that I wanted to ask, really. So all I'm left with on those points really is that that we would keep a pedestrian and cycle access into Low Road, but we will take to ourselves a certainty that we can close it to vehicle traffic. I think is where we're getting to on that, which is what I think is necessary. And I think
not into debate now, John. It's just a question. What is your question?
Yes, yeah, fair point. The other question is, can we take all of page 219 sustainability condition as what we will be getting and adding to the recommended conditions?
Well, Daniel, page 219, can you just comment on that, please?
Yeah, of course. Just catching up with members in terms of where they are in the report. Let's have a look. Yes, we can see that implemented. I don't think there's an issue with that, members.
Thank you very much.
And if we're looking at conditions for a moment, the other one I just ask about
Well,
is biodiversity.
I think we do that. I think you bring those in subject to whatever proposals made.
Yeah, fine.
Thank you. Unless you've got any questions on particular points within it, otherwise we can just bring it in when we get to that, if we get to that stage, if you're happy with that. Okay. Right, well, so I'll now move on. We don't have a representative from the parish council. We don't have an objector or a supporter, but we do have the agent, Leslie Short. So if you could turn your camera on, please.
Can you hear me?
We can. Welcome, and you have 3 minutes to address the committee.
I'm going to say what I was going to say, but I would imagine that I can address several of the points that have been raised by members in questions afterwards. So good morning, members of the committee. I'm Leslie Short of Artisan Planning. I represent the developer Landex Limited, a local builder with a growing reputation for the delivery of quality housing, and the proposal before you today is no exception. Huge amount of time, resource and energy, together with technical design skills, has been employed to bring about just 18 dwellings on a site which is already allocated in all the relevant development plans. It is perhaps an example of how difficult it is and how much resource is required to address the ongoing problem of housing need delivered through planning permissions. It may only be 18 dwellings, but that's a significant contribution to the district and, more importantly, Debenham's housing needs. Landex and its development team have addressed thoroughly and comprehensively every aspect of this development in this application for planning permission, which is a full planning application, and the company looks forward to the day when, after several years of preparation, to being able to get on with the construction and delivery of both the market and affordable housing comprised within the scheme. The scheme contains a good mix of dwelling types designed to address identified need, and for the first time, for a very long time in my experience, this is the first application I've seen where the numbers of bungalows to be delivered equals the numbers of houses, and thus addresses the needs of specific groups of the population. So in summary, I say to you that this is a well-designed scheme, seeks to address the constraints and opportunities that the site offers and poses. Coupled with delivery by my client's Landex, we look forward to the realisation of a high-quality housing development that we in the village of Debenham can be proud of. I do hope that this committee shares that view and approves the scheme today. So happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Questions from members? Yeah, Councillor Guthrie.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Short. Thank you very much. Can you just explain how much of the hedge in feet and inches or centimetres, because I'm not quite in that game, you will be removing to widen Low Road? Thank you.
I will need the assistance of Daniel with some of his plans. Probably the landscaping plan is a good place to start. Could you do that, Daniel?
It's just there are a lot of sort of personal houses on that road that are actually on the road.
Absolutely. So this is the, I'll address the question in two parts. The first is in relation to the site specific area, and I hope it's reasonably clear from the master plan in front of you that the existing trees and hedge line in the olive green colour shown on this plan are that which is to be retained. The section of hedging which is to be removed you can see is covered and trees and is covered by the light green area where the access is proposed to go through, and the replacement landscaping is shown just behind it, which is new hedging going in here. Now, to answer the second part of the question, which was the road widening off-site, I don't know whether you've got that plan, Daniel. But the answer to your question is that the road widening off-site, which is at the top of, which is further up towards the village, these plans are all submitted. Detailed plans showing the exact extent of the highway to be widened are shown or are submitted and available on the website and have been since day one on the width of the road at, Daniel, I don't know whether you can put your cursor onto the plan, please. Whilst Daniel, noticed on that plan that you've got site access plan. It's not at a particularly good scale, this plan, but right at the top, you can see a line which is a thicker black line off-site towards the village centre, and the road widening is to take place on the southern side of Low Road. And if my memory serves me correctly, the increased width or the road widening at that point is never more than 500 millimetres.
May I just come back, Chair?
So,
yep, please do.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Short. I mean, you very kindly sent me an enlarged paper copy some months ago, but I just wanted the committee to be aware of what the extent. It's quite negligible, really, of what you're able to do. I mean, you've got your constraints. Thank you for the answer. Thank you.
It's not just what we're able to do. It's being conscious of the character and design of Low Road and what's necessary, and the design has resulted from several hours of discussion with the Highway Authority.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions for the agent? No? Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Short.
May I just make one comment, which I think is essential?
No, I'm sorry, if members don't ask a question directly, they've had the 3 minutes. Thank you. Okay, so Councillor Guthrie, is the ward member, over to you.
Thank you. Right. Well, here we are again with a made neighbourhood plan, site allocations in both neighbourhood plan and joint local plan, and a planning application before us, and Mid Suffolk District Council having a 5-year land supply. It's true to say that people near the application site aren't happy with the situation, but this has all been through a local referendum and it is an allocated site. On the face of it, it would appear to tick all the boxes, but does it? Throughout the initial approach, the proposal and layout has been improved with only 18 houses and, as we understand, 6 affordable, when the site was judged to be able to take up to 35 properties. And on the face of it, this is a nice scheme and the application would seem reasonable with a good mix of properties nicely spaced. We have had a late objection from Mr. Rogerson and Helen Oust regarding the overlooking of their property, but in planning terms, I'm not sure that that would be appropriate. Well, it is to them. Of course, the Cherry Tree farmhouse loses, quote, its last remnant of its connection to the surrounding countryside, deemed by the heritage team to be low level of less than substantial harm. I'm not sure that owner sees it that way. And why, just because there are other surrounding constraints, should we put the final nail in the coffin? Perhaps a more detailed landscaping could be incorporated if members were minded to approve. Flooding is a big issue in Debenham, and we've already heard we haven't had the photographs, and it really is a shame that you couldn't really appreciate both the site and the narrowness of the road. And where this bit I allude to is that the water levels on Low Road of recent date have made it impassable at the other end of Low Road, I will grant you. And near the bridge at the Cherry Tree has nearly been overtopped by running water. The water then runs under the road adjacent to the Cherry Tree, and a local landowner did some work on the water course, and the Environment Agency went out, and although the work was not sanctioned, it was felt that the owner would be held responsible if any undermining of the river on the curve occurred. And this is only 400 or 500 yards away from this, but the culvert that this development is on would run into that. Has that been taken into account? I note the EI would have preferred, quote, modelling of the culvert, but seemingly happy with the mitigation which has been provided. And members have asked, can a safe, dry escape route be identified? Because although they say that they can get to the piece of land which would join through to Deb 3, it currently would go straight onto a ploughed field. There are no footpaths up there. In short, a shortfall of early years schooling exists and an appropriate payment is requested to mitigate it. And I say all these things because we have members of the public listening and people not understanding how some of their concerns are addressed. And I know you as councillors in the report will do that. The officer and I both have to keep up to date. Debenham is a core village, not a key service centre, but indeed has many services and shops. The doctors are just on Low Road, and the one photograph that we did see where there were some cars parked along on the left-hand side is exactly where the doctors are. They're in an old house. And that's one of the concerns of the residents, not just for appointments, but the location on Low Road. Currently, in the COVID lockdown and different working pattern for our local GP practice, cars are at a minimum. However, with the old Cherry Tree pub, now a Vets, their car park is full and many cars park on that narrow link road and the narrow part of Low Road. So when the GPs return to seeing their patients in surgery, there will be even more congestion. In addition, if you wish to go to the high street by car, turning at the junction again, unfortunately we can't see it, but it's by the dentists. If you turn left, you take your life into your own hands. It's a blind junction and often with delivery vans and lorries parked on the other side of the road, delivering to the antique restoration facility. And there have been accidents there, and only last year an ambulance was called. But highways stick to the national rules of severe, and they don't think extra traffic here would be severe. But that brings me nicely on to the Debenham Neighbourhood Plan, recently lauded and given second place nationally. Planning and this committee should be guided by our made neighbourhood plan. Policy Deb 4 is quite explicit, no exit onto Low Road, and the inspector concurred with this. At the time of making of the plan, it had been approved and adopted, the covenant holding up any development on the off-site Ipswich Road, Deb 3, and adjacent to this site was not known. That said, the JLP has until 2037, when that is finally adopted, for this site to come forward and the other site. One might say, well, let's just do a temporary exit, and when the site becomes available, the exit can be closed, new one made, and that's fine, and we can leave it for foot and cycles. But that's making an awful lot of assumptions. Will this developer be the winning applicant for that site? If not, would that applicant want their site to be a route through? Would it be held as a ransom strip, as Sarah Mansell has brought up? As a committee, and I feel reluctant to say this, you should do what it says on the tin and refuse the application on the clear made instructions and policies of the Debenham Neighbourhood Plan and refuse the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cuthbert. We have some questions for you, it looks like. Councillor Matheson, then Councillor Haddingham. Do you have questions for the ward member?
Yeah, excuse me. Do you think it would be helpful if the chair agreed to a 10-minute recess while the officers got some Google Street View scenes up so that we could see Low Road? I do, use Low Road to reach Debenham when I visit it, and I know that what you said is true. It is frequently congested and not a brilliant road, really. Would that help? Would the chair agree to it?
Anything to give you members comfort that you're making your decision on all the information available, but that's up to the chair. If he thinks there's sufficient, then...
Well, I don't think we need a 10-minute break. If officers can see what they can get together while we keep taking other questions and see what they come back with, and if it's not enough, then we can always go to a quick break. Councillor Haddingham.
Oh, I was going to say pretty much the same thing. Could we see this blind junction that Kathy talks about and exactly where the doctors is?
Yeah, that's the doctors and the dentists.
We need to be careful because the highways comments are in the reports, obviously.
Yeah, but it's just like I say, it shows us. I sort of vaguely know Debenham, but I don't know this Low Road.
Okay, and Councillor Stringer.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, obviously, my question is about the neighbourhood plan. In Deb 4, it says that there should be no access onto Low Road. Is there any traffic assessment within the appendices of that neighbourhood plan that would show us where that position comes from?
I honestly can't answer that question. I'm sorry,
Okay. Sorry. Okay.
Okay. Councillor Field?
Not quite sure the appropriate point. I just wanted to make clear that I didn't look at the agent's name when I read these papers. I do know Mr. Short, not well and not as a great buddy. He does live in Badwell, the same village as I am in, and recently been resisting a different application of his. I just want to make it
clear. So it's
clear
a non-pecuniary interest.
It's non-pecuniary. I don't think it influences his decisions in any significant way, but members and the public should be aware.
Thank you very much.
I'll just quickly join in, Chair, to say I agree with you. This is clearly a non-pecuniary interest that needn't trouble Councillor Field. He has now properly declared it.
Thank you very much. Okay, so have we got, Daniel, more pictures you can put up from Google Earth or from a better roadmap that we could show the positioning of? Yep. There we go.
And if you look where it says Low Road and the cream bungalow, and the pink is the dentist, and if you're coming up the other way into High Street, which is at the bottom of the picture and to the right, you can actually see there is a lorry parked on the opposite side that's correct, thank you, and that's parked there. And when you come out in a car here, you cannot see round that corner. You know, and there's all sorts of traffic there, but that's not this applicant's. He's not here to sort that out. I'm merely pointing it out. You see, you come up there, and and you just can't see round that corner. But and then could you go back a little to the water course where I was? So if you go back up Low Road, keep going up there, keep going. Stop. The fire engines are on your right, and if you turn left, if you go to the other way, keep going. Wait a minute. Well, that's no longer there. I'm trying to get to the other angle near the cherry tree. Do you know where the cherry tree is? Yeah, there's the.
So I'll describe it. Keep going to the junction and then turn left. There you go. Now turn left, please.
Yeah, perfect.
Down that road on the left, and that takes you down to the cherry tree. And there's the water course. Okay, now left there, and then that's the other way into the site, and there's the cherry tree down there on the right.
And if you keep going just a little further down that little lane there, if you'd be so kind.
Sorry, is this where it floods, Kathy? That sort of goes river there, right?
Yeah, but well, not actually on that junction. It's further on in that triangle between the dentist and the cherry tree. But that has been rare. But the Low Road has flooded at the other end to get out the other way. I'm just making you aware there is a flood issue, and if they're not going to do what it was to the culvert, the floods appear to be satisfied with what they've got. But anyway.
So there's a flood here where you just see this.
No. You need to swing it round to the right again. Sorry. But anyway, keep going. Keep going a bit more. Stop. And where on the left, I think there's a bridge by that the big chestnut tree. People will walk across there, but it floods all across there. It hasn't flooded of recent date, but it's been nearly over to just above the sign is a little bridge, a footway, and the water has nearly overtopped that. But I don't know how it would react with further, whatever the mitigations are, whether it would be satisfactory.
Yeah. We've got some more questions. Councillor Mayor.
Thanks, Chair. Councillor Guthrie, you are asking us to reject this application on access grounds, but the parish council seem to take a more flexible approach in that they ask for the access to Low Road must only be temporary if we are mindful to approve. Do you see that your position is at odds with the parish council?
No, because I've been listening to what the parish council and the local residents have been saying, but I on the face of it, as I said right at the beginning, the whole site ticks all the boxes, but it is dead against the neighbourhood plan. That's the problem. Because if you look at the parish council's last response, they are saying that it's against their neighbourhood plan. But Debenham does want development. There's no two ways about it. But I'm just doing what people have asked me to represent them on.
Councillor Field.
Does anybody have any view of the return period of flooding in the area, particularly near the site? You know, does it is it a once a year event or a once every 10 years event or whatever? Do we know what that figure is?
I haven't personally got details, but I have seen over the last year, Low Road has flooded in 2 places. But this is all this would contribute to it. I don't know if the floods are satisfied with what's being mitigated. It's not for me to say. I'm not the expert, but I've seen it flood.
Daniel, do you want to come in with any views on what the floods team have said on that, please?
Yes, thank you. So I'm just getting up to the site is part of flood zone 2 and 3. So flood zone 2 is land having between a 1 in 100 and 1 in 1,000 annual probability of flooding. Flood zone 3 is land having a 1 in 100 or greater annual probability of flooding. So that is the definition of risk that we have from the flood zones. In terms of the comments from the flood and water management team, they're content that the details that have been brought forward in the application are sufficient to mitigate and deal with the flood risk from the flood zones 2 and 3 at the frontage of the site.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Councillor Guthrie? No? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Okay, so that's all the information before us. It's now up to us to debate, discuss and to reach a conclusion. Over to members. Councillor Guthrie, if you just take your hand down for us, please, as well. Thank you. Councillor Matheson.
Yeah, I thought it would be helpful just to start by looking at what the parish council actually said, and I think they are then removing the temporary access to Low Road, etc. That is essentially a fallback position if we are minded to approve. Really, if you read the detail on page 195, what they said. So I think they are basically objecting. So I think I just wanted to be clear about that.
Thank you.
Listen to other members.
Thank you, Councillor Matheson. Next up is Councillor Muller.
Thank you, Chair. I fully appreciate everything that's been said, but I think I'd like to make a positive point towards this. The Suffolk Constabulary did actually make a number of recommendations in the paper they submitted as a consultee. And looking at the plans that have been shown to us, I do believe these have actually been taken into consideration. So I think that is a really positive point with this particular layout of these houses and bungalows. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Stringer.
Thank you, Chair. This is a relatively difficult one, but then that's why it's here. I actually think we're on an interesting horns of a dilemma, because neighbourhood plans don't have to show land assemblage packages and sort of pass deliverability tests in terms of the housing. You can end up with situations like this where there aren't agreement between landowners. And what would normally happen in the very distant past, if there were landowners of housing that we all agreed needed to come forward, often the local authority would step in to become the honest broker. So you didn't end up with people having ransom strips. And I think that's what we're being asked to do here. I mean, almost in a way, we're being asked to approve a planning application that in one element disagrees with a neighbourhood plan, to try and enact a policy of the neighbourhood plan. Because it's my understanding at the moment there is no land assemblage agreement here between the two parties. And at the moment, there's a route to delivering this, but in order to deliver it, we have to go against, for a undefined period of time, against one of the conditions of the neighbourhood plan, where all I can see at the moment that there is no master plan for this area. So it makes it really, really difficult. I'm minded to approve this in the way that it's set, because I can see problems if we don't. If we don't approve this and housing delivery becomes difficult because of economic reasons, we could be sitting here in a few years' time with no houses being delivered, and we losing our 5-year land supply. Then we're in a totally different area. And I get the sensitivity of this neighbourhood plan wishing there not to be an access here for cars. I get that, but in able to get to a position where there are no access for cars, we may have to approve this in this form and allow Mid Suffolk, with the proviso that Mid Suffolk is that honest broker, so that land doesn't become a ransom strip, to deliver that policy finally for that neighbourhood plan. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Mansell.
Thank you, Chair. I wholeheartedly agree with Councillor Stringer's comments, because on the face of it, I think this does look like a reasonable application, but we have this one sticking point. And in fact, Councillor Matheson's comment about the parish council, yes, they are objecting to it, but they also see that they've got this fallback position that should we be minded to approve this, that access onto Low Road is eventually stopped up. And so long as we can guarantee that is going to happen, and if that means Mid Suffolk has to step in and buy the land or whatever they have to do, then I think this might be the compromise that we have to take. However, if we are minded to approve, as well as a condition that I think has already been mentioned about the sustainability schemes, I would also like to see a condition about the ducting for EV charging for those properties that don't have a parking spot outside their house.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Guthrie, I can't bring you back in because we're in debate now. I noticed your hands up.
No, that was from before. I'm so sorry.
Right, okay, no problem. I don't have any hands up, so I'll just add my penny's worth then. I agree with Councillor Stringer and with Councillor Mansell. We're absolutely in a bind on this. For me, this is really messy, actually. We're being asked to approve something that's only going to be temporary, that's reliant on someone else bringing forward another site that, as has been said, we don't know if it's viable. We're being asked to direct traffic across an area that floods frequently, and I'm in and out of Debenham a lot, and Low Road floods a lot. I say a lot, I mean, you know, it could be this week, it could be next week, it may not be this year, but it does flood.
Chair, I'm really sorry to interrupt. We've just lost Councillor Matheson, so we'll just have to pause briefly, otherwise he won't be able to take part. Because we need to make sure he hears all the information before members when coming to a decision.
Okay.
I'll just wait for Mandy to confirm.
Right, well, it could take him 5 or 10 minutes. What I suggest we do is no discussions, please, and we'll start again at 11:35 so that we can find him and everyone can have a quick 10-minute break. So we'll start again at 11:35. So, Councillor Matheson, are you back with us?
Yeah, yes, Chair, I am. I got as far as Councillor Stringer being on the horns of a dilemma, and then Teams failed, and then it dragged my whole computer down, and to the point where it had to send away the error messages and reboot it, so all the rest of it. So yes, I'm now fully working again, but I must have
so you missed just before me was Councillor Mansell.
Yeah, I did miss Councillor Mansell entirely.
Councillor Mansell, would you just like to give a quick summary of what you said, just for the benefit of Councillor Matheson?
Yeah, I basically said that I agreed with Councillor Stringer that we were in a bit of a dilemma because it seemed that it was a compromise to allow planning on this site before the Deb 3 site. But I'd also said that if we were minded to approve, I would like to see a condition about ducting for EV charging points for those people who don't have a parking space right outside their house.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Thank you. Do we need to do a roll call, Robert, or are we happy? Do we just get everyone to turn their camera on just to show they're here?
I was going to say, if that's easier, Chair, that would.
Yeah, could everyone just turn their camera on just so we know all members are back? All present and correct, Robert?
Yep, the only person I can't see is Councillor Haddingham, but I think it's because there's only so many we can have on the screen.
Councillor Haddingham, are you present?
I am here. I am here.
Brilliant.
Well done.
Apologies, Councillor, and thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Okay, so we'll continue. So just after Councillor Mansell went, I was just starting, John, when we got to the point where we realised you'd been cut off. So basically what I was just about to say was that this is a real pickle, this application to me. It doesn't work for several reasons in many ways, because what we're being asked to do is to approve something on the basis that something may happen next door in the future to allow us to deliver a transport and access to the site through a route that we all know is better and preferred. Low Road does flood. It's not a great access point. We know up further along Low Road does flood towards the dentists. So those things feel messy. Also, Mid Suffolk is being asked to step in to look at taking on some land when we have a policy of not wanting to take on land at the moment and actually reduce our exposure and reduce risk. So for me, and then the pedestrian cycle access is going to be very important, but obviously we've been told that can be conditioned. But it just feels not quite right to me. I don't know why. I'm not that content. So I'll see what other members have to say. Councillor Field, you were next.
Yes, I'm afraid I find that really this is a fairly small site, so there are traffic issues on Low Road, and indeed further deeper into Debenham. Yes, there are issues there that have been there for some time and will remain. I don't personally find that sufficient to block development of this site, but I accept the parish's wishes for exit from it to be via the other Deb 3 site. One has to ask when that'll come forward, and clearly it's a financial constraint on it, nothing else. It's a defined site, and the financial difficulty will disappear within a relatively short number of years. No reason actually why the planning etc. shouldn't carry on while that period expires. So I'm inclined to think, my view is that site probably will come forward. The issue with flooding is an issue of the road floods. How occasionally, as you're implying, sort of once a year, maybe flood zone 3, but it's not an issue of houses if built here will get inundated or anything remotely like that. The site seems to be above the area that floods. And Debenham needs development, as the local member said. So I'm inclined to feel I'm fairly relaxed about this. I do take Councillor Mansell's view that we need to make sure that there is a capability to put in additional car charging points without the cost of digging up vast areas of road or whatever. So that we've thought a bit ahead on that, and I think with that provision, then I would be fairly happy to see this go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Field. Councillor Mayor.
Thank you, Chair. I don't see a problem with this site as long as the access is conditioned to allow no permanent vehicle access onto Low Road. Now, I'm not sure what permanent means. Is it going to be 5 years? Is it going to be 10 years? What happens if the other site doesn't come to fruition? So I believe the parish council recognise that there's an issue, and they've, in their response, they've highlighted that they would, if we're mindful to approve, accept access onto Low Road. And Highways, in their assessment, don't believe that this small site accessing onto Low Road would cause any additional issues. So I think I would be mindful to approve, as long as we can condition the access is removed when the new site comes on stream. But having said that, I can see in the future we're actually creating more problems, because when we try and close off, or when that access is closed off, I have a sneaking suspicion that many of the residents in the site that we're considering today will be very upset, and then there'll be another wrangle that will take place to whether they should be or shouldn't be closed off. But that's a planning issue for another day. So on balance, I think I am mindful to support approval of this application.
Thank you. Councillor Matheson.
Yeah, I must say I'm not very keen on this. I think really flood risk. Yes, they've done all the assessments and there will be a plan and so on and so on. But I think we know that year by year the flood incidence of flooding is worsening, and as far as it being a temporary road access, it's a permanent road access until it isn't any longer. So it is permanent if the other one doesn't come forward for whatever reason. So I think because of the flooding and the uncertainty, I'm very reluctant, and I will probably think of voting against.
Thank you. Councillor Muller.
Thank you, Chair. Having listened to the debate, and I do agree this is quite a messy application, but I think just on balance, I think I'm more inclined to approve this application than reject it, Chair. Thank you.
Well, we don't have any proposals yet, just so we're clear. No one's put a proposal in. Councillor Stringer, then Councillor Muller.
Yep. Not wishing to shrink the amount of Christmas cards that may or may not come through my door, I think that on balance, I will, to move the debate on as well, move approval on this. It's not with glee, because there is one element of this application that goes against an agreed neighbourhood plan. Having said that, from all of the evidence that I have, looking at all of the evidence, including what we've submitted in our joint local plan. At the moment, we've suggested this site in our joint local plan consultation is, quote, available. If we now say it isn't available, it's going to cause us difficulties, and Debenham difficulties, further down the line if we cannot demonstrate that it is. Even though it's in a form that the neighbourhood plan didn't agree to, but this may well be the only route we can deliver the wishes and aspirations of that neighbourhood plan. And I think with some controls put in, i.e. Mid Suffolk being that honest broker over that, quote, ransom strip, I think we may stand a better chance of delivering the outcomes of that neighbourhood plan than if we didn't. Like I say, it isn't with glee that I move approval, but I honestly think that our officers are trying to deliver two different things at the same time. They're trying to deliver because they've got it in the report and they're trying to get those aspirations of that neighbourhood plan front and centre here, but equally with the demands of the MPPF that says that we'll engage positively with developers to bring about positive housing outcomes. And it's that little tip of the balance that suggests that I would be happy to move approval in this case. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And do you just want to comment on the access and the cycleways?
Absolutely. The access at the rear obviously was, in any event, will be open for cycles and pedestrians and for emergency vehicles. I think that's actually something that we do forget at times, to have a secondary access. If this whole site ends up getting built like we think it will, I think a secondary access in the back end there for emergency vehicles could well be a bonus, certainly knowing that part of this area is liable to flooding, of course, and I take that all into account. But I think going through what we've been through, I think I'll be happy to move approval in this case. Thank you, Chair.
And can I just ask, what about the legal obligation that the parish council has asked regarding pedestrian and cycle access? So we put that as a legal obligation.
Yeah. Happy with that, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Muller.
Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor String has made some very, very valid points, so I'm happy to second his approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Mansell.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to know where we are standing with any additional conditions with this proposal from Councillor Stringer regarding the sustainability and the EV power ducting, whether they were included or not.
I thought it was taken as read that they were included. Sorry, I should have mentioned it. Yes, I want to include those conditions as we've discussed during the debate on sustainability and ducting for EV charging points. Thank you, Chair.
You. Can I run through those quickly? Would that be all right?
Yes.
So we've got a condition for a scheme.
Should we just double check, see if anyone else is adding anything, and then we'll come to them. Is that right? Councillor Mayor, is that at Old Hand, or did you want to come in? Councillor Haddingham.
Oh, it's just a bit of a stupid question, really. Will it be down to the developer to tell the people that buy these houses that entrance is going to be stopped up? Is that something that they have to do sort of by law, or do they not have to?
I don't think there would be any specific requirement for them to do that, but I think we touched earlier, and this is what I was wanting to come to, about an informative detailing the potential access arrangements for DEB 3 if that comes forward. And also I was kind of minded to suggest that perhaps we just clarify the section 106 proposal slightly, that will have some reference to dealing with how the access is expected to be closed if DEB 3 comes forward, so that is enshrined in that way.
So, Gemma, do you just want to run through the recommendations now then, please?
Yep. So we've got the recommendation for approval on page 190 to 191. And then we've got additional conditions for a scheme of sustainable and renewable energy measures to be agreed, including a scheme for electric vehicle parking, including ducting. Then we've got an informative detailing the access arrangement if DEB 3 comes forward. And then the matching part to that one, that the section 106 will have a mechanism for dealing with how that's expected to happen, whether that's us taking on the land, some management opportunities that can be, agreed through the section 106 process, but that we would have some expectation of doing that under the section 106. So they were the additions I had noted.
Okay, thank you. Are you happy with that, Councillor Stringer?
Very happy, Chair.
And the seconder, Councillor Muller?
I too am happy with that, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. So on that basis, unless John Matheson, Councillor Matheson, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I did a long time ago. I did spot that the biodiversity recommendations had omitted Swift bricks, which we think is one of the simplest and cheapest things to include. So please, can we include them?
Councillor Stringer, Councillor Mayor, your view?
Yep, happy with that.
Muller, sorry, Councillor Muller?
Yes, happy with that. Thank you, Chair.
So we'll add those. Okay, anything else? I think that's it then. So there is a proposer. We'll now ask the Chief Planning Officer just to, well, I think we already have really, to run through. I don't think we need to do that again. I think that's been clear to us. So I'll move straight on to ask the Governance Officer to conduct an electronic vote.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just putting the final touches into the electronic vote after the points that members have raised. So I will be with you in 2 seconds. Apologies for any spelling mistakes in there. So if members could go to the same point as before in modern.gov, and I will open the vote now. So we've just got one person who hasn't voted. Thank you, Chair. So the resolution is carried by 6 votes to 2.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we'll now move on to the next agenda item, which is DC 20-03632. I will stand down being the local ward member and hand the chair over to Councillor Dave Muller. Councillor Muller, over to you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hicks. I would now like to invite the case officer, Jamie Martin Edwards, please, to introduce the application to the committee, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I will just start sharing the presentation. If you could all just let me know when you can see that clearly.
We can see that.
Excellent.
Yeah, I can see that, Jamie. Yeah, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I'll begin the presentation now. This application is for land east of Abbey Hill in Hoxne. This follows on from an outline application that was approved by the District Council in 2017. You may remember, as pointed out at the beginning of the committee, this application was before members in the summer, around August time, for the reserve matters for 4 dwellings. The original outline application was for up to 4. And this is a revised scheme after that application was refused. So the reserve matters, like I said, is for 3 dwellings this time, and this includes access, appearance, landscaping, layout and scale. So first of all, just an aerial map of the site. I will span out from here, but this is the site here, and I think what's a good idea to start with is it will be a lot more clearer when we go through the slides, but the monument, which is a material consideration in this instance, is just below my cursor, just here. I'll just move it so it's nice and easy to see. So just zooming out, we've got Hoxne in 2 parts. We've got a northern part of Hoxne and a southern part, both having their own separate settlement boundaries, and the site sits in the middle. And just the red line plan, and again just highlighting there that they've got St Edmund's Monument on the right hand side of the site. I'll also say that you've got Abbey Hill Road, which runs following my cursor now. And there's also reference made within the report of a public right-of-way, and that goes back on itself to the north here, runs off to the right. So just a little bit more detail in regards to the constraints of the area. So the green line at the top here outlines the settlement boundary for the northern part of Hoxne. The pink line on this side outlines the settlement boundary for the southern part of Hoxne. We can see here the red line of the site abutting that settlement boundary. The purple line on the south and the purple line on the north indicates the conservation area. We've just highlighted clearly there that the St Edmund's Monument is selected here. And we've also got the flood zone risk areas of 2 and 3 highlighted in blue. And also just note some other listed buildings in the area. We've got a Grade 2 star listed Abbey Farmhouse. We also have the Grade 2 listed wall, another listed building in here, and we've got 2 listed buildings just down the bottom here, both Grade 2. Another constraints map, just highlighting all of this green area as a special landscape area. Tried not to put too many constraints on one map, just so we can see them individually. And again, this is just highlighting all the constraints that we've just gone through in a more standardized map format. So green area is your special landscape area. The site clearly sits outside of that, but does have some interaction with it. So I'm going to move on to the actual block plan. I think this is a good place to start. We've got the monument, which is grade 2 listed. I think it's key to note at this stage, when the outline application was approved, this monument was not listed. The listing came after the outline application was approved in 2017. I will also move on next to the accesses. So we've got 2 accesses, one into plot 1, which is here, and 1 access into plot 2s and 3. This is a shared access. The outline application originally had this access slightly more to the north. This has been moved as to have 2 plots served by 1 access. It needs to meet certain highway standards. Originally, that was a little bit skinnier or slimmer. That access, in essence, could only serve 1 plot, which was fine at the time. However, if we want it to just serve 1 plot, that means the subsequent plot needs to be served off this access, which means that it would cross over the path, which I'll come on to a second, the path. But on balance, we felt that to widen this access to make sure it serves 2 plots rather than just 1, mitigating the need for a secondary access to cross over the path to serve the other plot, on balance, it means that we are going to have to lose an ash tree here, T2 tree. That is, however, going to be replaced with another tree here. So on balance, we felt that that is acceptable. So I will move on to the path next. Currently, there is a permissible path existing all the way up to the monument. This application, as part of a Section 106 agreement, will secure that path in perpetuity. However, it will only secure it between the red line areas. From this boundary, where the red line finishes, up to the monument, we can't secure that. That's outside of the red line plan and also in a different ownership. So we can't reasonably secure that. Therefore, the public benefit that has been attributed to that is only associated with this area and not this area here. This will remain as a permissive path. You will also notice that we have a wide area in the internal centre of the site, which is for open space. Originally, the application offered to use this as part of a covenants under plot 1, that they will be the owners of this and will need to maintain it. However, we don't have, as a planning authority, any control over a covenants and felt that inappropriate in this instance, and therefore it will be part of a Section 106, which will be agreed afterwards should this application be approved. Excuse me. I'll just also note then we've got plot 1, which is this kind of L shape here, and we've got plots 2 and 3, kind of standard format of a shape of a house there. We've also got their subsequent garages individually detached, and this one over here. And also, just to say, in terms of the open space area, we'll be looking to control this via a maintenance condition. Also, just note as well that if I zoom in a little bit, which hopefully you can do there, we've got some blue lines through here which show we've got 1 metre post and rail fencing. That will go all the way around this plot. Again, post and rail fencing along the path and around the areas of plots 1 and 2. Excuse me, we do also have close bordered fencing in this area here, here and here, and that's obviously to secure amenity areas within these plots. Let's move on to the next slide. This is plot 1. This has had some revisions to it, which I can come on to if necessary. Originally, under the scheme that we saw in August, it was all of single-storey height. We'll notice now on this element, we now have a 1.5 storey. This is in essence 50 centimetres higher in ridge height. So we have this element here being 6.5 metres. There's 1.5 with living accommodation in the roof. Whereas this area here, we're looking at 6 metres. We're talking about a 50 centimetre difference to allow for an extra space of living accommodation in this roof area. These are plots 2 and 3, and I'll just flick back to 2. They're very similar in design and kind of matching in character. We've got some detailing around the barge boards, above the windows. We've got a plinth, bit more of a character with the oak porch as well. And we've got a chimney. Please note though that the chimney obviously doesn't actually have any working order inside. It merely is for decorative reasons. And again, you can see this plot in terms of how it's laid out. Plot 3 is very much just a mirror image of that. These are the carports for plots 2 and 3, very modest in scale, for 1 parking space with a store area at the rear. This is the garage for plot 1. Again, 2 bays on this one, garden store and traditional materials being used. Tree survey plan in front of us here, just indicating that this will be controlled by condition and shows where the protective fencing will be going during construction phases to ensure that we don't have any adverse impacts to the tree root canopies of the trees that will be remaining. So we've got that tree there remaining, that tree there remaining in this one. And you'll remember from the previous slides, there is an ash tree to come out there and an ash replacement tree to go in its place once the development is done. And just before I do the comparison between these, I also should just note up here, this is the plan that we're looking at today as part of our consideration. The one on the right hand side is what came before members committee back in August, so I'll go for that in a second. But just to indicate that we've got T5, T6 and T7. These are 3 trees that are indicated as being new planting in here as subsequent sort of shielding to plot 1. But notice obviously around where T4 is an existing tree, this is all kept open to secure the views into the monument as part of this open space. So just in comparison to what you obviously saw and refused at committee back in August, the 2 plots of 2 and 3, these were 8.5 metre high dwellings. These were large dwellings at the front. They were orientated in a way to provide a sense of place, giving a centrepiece in terms of the access to the path. In this instance, we've got rid of those 2 out of the front and really enhanced this area here to provide us a real open space and secure this 2 plots facing down Abbey Hill, and again securing that kind of sense of place that we were trying to achieve in the first instance, but just making it more open and setting of the listed building, which is off this site here but is approximately here if we use the left hand plan as an indicator. So just to confirm the differences, plot 1 originally 6.2 metres tall, 235 square metres when we look back in August. Now we're looking at only 6 metres tall at the single storey level, whereas the 1.5 is 6.5 metres, 253 square metres. And then plot 2 and 3 is where we're seeing a significant drop in sizes. As you see, plots 2 and 3 were 8.5 metres tall, plot 4 being 8.4 metres tall. Single storey element now is down to 5.7 metres, and each individual house is 106 square metres. This is merely just to show a comparison of what you saw back in August compared to what the developer is bringing forward to us now. So just to run through some photos, you may remember some of these photos from last time. This arrow here we used as part of the committee last time just to indicate there's a bit of a space here. We predicted that we would probably see the roof lines of the large 8.5 houses in this area, which would kind of correspond with the development line in there and wouldn't look out of place. But obviously now we've gone through to single storey elements. This will still stay as a kind of no built form in this area. And this arrow here just indicates the stairs that goes up into the site towards to get to the monument across the site here. You'll notice in this area here, the photos will show where they've been taken from with this arrow. So just moving a little bit forward, you can just start to see the handrail of the stairs that goes up. You can see the oak tree that's going to remain, and you can also see the ash tree that's going to come out to allow for the access to go in, and we can just see behind that the other ash tree which is going to remain. This is standing right in front of the stairs. This photo was taken, I believe, just around about June time. You can see here that obviously the site is a bit of shrubs that have been growing in. Currently you can't see the monument, almost like a strategically placed shrub there, but I can assure you that in later parts of the year, which you will see in a second, in the absence of this, the monument, you can be seen directly here. So walking up the stairs and into the site and still looking across to the east, the monument is clear there. And again, walking across at the time, there was a kind of 2 metre mowed grass area allowing the permissible path through, and obviously with the shrublands growing here. So there's a monument up front and close. This is exactly what it looks like. And again, just off to the left, along down this end, which you can just see the edge of here, obviously you've got the special landscape area. So the monument is behind me here in this photo, and this is just to clearly indicate tea tree 4 and the oak tree and the other ash tree, these are all to remain, and this is the one that's due to come out to allow for that access to come in and prevent the third plot being accessed from this access and crossing the path. So again, just noticing here where we're looking, we're within the site and we're looking straight down Abbey Road Hill. You can just see a cyclist there going down. Just to give an indication, obviously, again, the special landscape area in the background, the traditional forms, the timber, the pan tiles, which the garages and carports in this application seek to sort of mimic. We're now down Abbey Hill Road here looking up, and I've indicated the arrow there. I think if I zoom in, you can't quite see it in this instance. I have to admit, though, when you're on site, the camera doesn't do it justice. You can see the monument there. It must be shown, though, that obviously where plot 1 will go, that view will be lost to the monument. Moving up, again, this is summertime, so this is heavily grown. This looks definitely different in the winter time. Obviously, it's shielded during this period of the year. And just moving closer to the site, we start to move past this verdant area, and you can see where plots 2 and 3 will be. You'll probably see just the edge of plot 3 there, and plot 2 looking down, and give you the indication that we're going into the site to get to the monument. Now, I've just moved on to the path here and out of the road. That summer vegetation that you could see is just in here, so I'm right on the edge of it. And again, the monument is quite clear and prominent in this instance. Plot 1 again is going to block this view from here. Just moving into the road again, you can still see it. So similar location, just stepping out to give us an idea as you move around. And it's at this point here that plot 1 will no longer break the view of the monument. This is where the open space is going to come in. As you can see, we're looking right across here, and this is where plot 1 will be moved into the northern part. So we're securing this area, it becomes a lot more up front. And again, the stairs are just here to give indication. And this is looking back across the special landscape area. We're within the site, just past the stairs and looking directly north. And what we can actually see there is the PROW sign. That's where the footpath rolls off down here. And again, just to show that with different times of the year, done a few site visits to this site over the course of the last 18 months. So again, looking over at the special landscape area. This is winter time. This is the monument, back to the monument. And these are the 2 houses opposite. If you remember when we looked at the tree line earlier in the summer period, these houses you can't really see. You can just see the top of Rosemount, which is this one, and Grassmere, which is over here. Obviously, winter, it's a different picture. And again, winter time is quite clear where the monument sits. This is actually a 2017 photo, just taken from back when the outline application was dealt with. I think this is a clear image here that actually the permissive path at times, agricultural field, could be ploughed. Permissive path at sometimes won't be as inviting as such as what it could be if it was secured. So I think just before I go through some of the details of the recommendation, I think key points to indicate here is that there's clearly going to be some harm to the monument in terms of its setting by putting development in this instance. I think the developers have done some work there to open up the space and instead of creating harm, offering some enhancements to the open space to it and securing that as part of a section 106. I, as part of my report, have taken the harm as being a low level of less than substantial. Our heritage team have indicated it as almost a neutral impact on it. Suffolk Preservation, as a result of this scheme, have removed their reasons for refusal under the scheme that you saw back in August, and actually is happy with the open space and feels that it does enhance the area. But for the purpose of my report, we have looked to say that there is harm, and taking that as a base level of harm, and then it's up to members to really debate whether or not the public benefits of securing the path and securing the open space around it, including the three new houses and some landscaping, whether or not that's enough public benefit to outweigh the harm. As you'll see in the report, I felt that it did. So some late papers obviously gave some indications of a objection that we received on Sunday evening, just highlighting and summarising those points and indicating within the report where they've already been covered. And also just to make sure that it is clear, the section 106 will secure this area in the middle, not to plot 1 in ownership, but as an open space and a maintenance condition to secure its ongoing maintenance. Thank you. Happy for taking any questions.
Councillor Matheson.
Yeah, I did just want to. I'm glad you touched on that final point, because I was not clear initially. So it will be an open space. So who's going to maintain it under the your proposed 106 and so on?
We'll be looking for a management company to look after that. I know that there was indications and conversation from the agent under the last application that if it was approved and the parish council were interested in taking it on, then they would happily look to allow that type of transition. However, I didn't feel it was appropriate at that stage, considering the parish council's comments to pursue that option. But as far as I understand, that still is an offer available. However, if that wasn't the case, then yes, it would be a management company that would take it on and would be dealing with that as part of a maintenance condition.
Thank you.
Thank you. I believe Councillor Mansell, you are next, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to ask about the necessity for the post and rail fencing either side of the path within that open space. Is that strictly necessary? And if so, why have we decided to, or why has the applicant decided to put that path, restricting it between the fences?
Yeah, like I said, I've done a fair amount of site visits to this area, and 2 of the site visits actually met people who were coming from outside the area to come and visit the monument. What I found when parking up round here to come and do the site visit is these people are actually coming in here and then just walking across the site there, rather than the permissible path, which isn't clearly indicated until you actually get to the steps. I'm not saying that's right nor wrong, not at all. I guess the point of the post and rail fence is to, 1, direct people across the actual path, and 2, as you'll see that we look to secure this as a wildflower meadow mix, is to prevent sort of people traipsing through, perhaps damaging what can be a potential sort of habitat here in terms of insects and vertebrae.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Phil, then Councillor Hicks, please.
Just for accuracy, looking at your report, para 5.5, you talk about the various heights. The western boundary is approximately 1.28 centimetre higher than the path in front of plot 2. What's that about the width of my thumb? Is that a correct measurement?
Apologies, can you just say those measurements again, Councillor?
There's 3 lines. One talks about 50 centimetres, the other one is 1.28 centimetres, and the next one is 1.50 centimetres.
Yeah, that's clearly a fault on my part. That needs to be metres, not centimetres. Apologies.
Thank you. About 1,000 times, no, 100 times different. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Field. Councillor Hicks, please.
Thank you. Can I just ask about the large tree that's being taken out, the ash tree? Is it a healthy ash tree, or does it have ash dieback?
I have no indication that it isn't a healthy ash tree. I think clearly in the photos, it's in full. I'll just get the photos up again so we can see.
Because ash trees, healthy ash trees are quite rare these days, so I just want to check. It does look like, yes, it's a healthy ash tree.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have a question, please, Jamie. Can you
Please.
confirm that the proposed footpath within the development, is that going to remain a grassed footpath, or will that be concreted, or will it have like a shingle path? You said mention it will be maintained under a Section 106 agreement. I just wanted to clarify what type of surface will be on that path. I appreciate it's going to be sort of a rough area, field area beyond the actual development, but just for the in that development zone, please.
Yeah, of course. There is no indication at this stage that of exactly what surface that would be. If people were asking my preference, I don't think this should be shingled. I think this should be kept as a grass area. We've got shingle and permeable surfaces on the driveways. Obviously, highway standards, this is going to have to be non-permeable for these areas with drainage to prevent any surface water going off down into the flood risk zones down in Abbey, at the bottom of Abbey Hill Road. So yeah, I would like to make sure that this stays as a permeable surface. And I think in terms of the character and the history of the monument, I personally would like to see this as being a grass area as part of the path. However, if members felt that it should be shingled to ensure that, you know, people didn't get their boots too muddy in the winter time, I think that's a reasonable condition that we can put on if we would rather see a different surface there.
Thank you very much. Do we have any more questions for the case officer, please?
Yes, I have another one.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Field.
Yes, on page 271, the proposed conditions, it says removal of permitted development rights for extensions, outbuildings and fencing. I think permitted development is heading for a situation where you could add an additional story to a bungalow. Are we going to restrict that as well?
Yes, I think that's a good idea. I think that is imperative that we do this, particularly for areas like Plot 1. So we can remove that as part of the condition, include that in there. I believe the ordinary wording that we would put in is more of a general removal of all permitted development rights, just highlighting the most important ones there. But I think you're right, that's a very important one as well. So we'll make sure that that's included should you be minded to approve the application.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hicks, then Councillor Stringer, please. Councillor Hicks, did you have another question? So you're
Sorry,
muted.
it's an old hand. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Stringer, then, please.
Be a legacy hand. There we go. Yeah, could you, on this very helpful map here, could you show me where the ash tree that's due to come out is by pointing your...
Yep, so the green circle is what is going to be replaced, and the black dotted circle is what's to be removed. That's indicating its canopy currently, and that's what's going to be replaced.
Okay, so it's on the edge of the road. Well, it's in the verge almost.
Yeah, so there's a path here that runs along here, a pedestrian footpath that goes all the way down Abbey Hill, and it's just slightly higher in that.
And what would be the consequences if we didn't agree to its removal?
If we didn't want it to be removed, they're not going to be able to get this access in to serve 2 plots. They could get an access in to serve 1 plot within those 2 trees. So it'd then be a case of, well, whether 1 plot remains and they get rid of the other one and push it over to this side, or vice versa. But yeah, I think on balance, to ensure that we don't have any crossing over of that footpath of an access, we felt that was acceptable.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Stringer. Do we have any more questions for the case officer? No? Then I would now ask the Parish Council representative, Sarah Foote, to speak. You have 3 minutes to address the committee, Sarah. Can you please turn your camera on, please, Sarah? Thank you.
Yeah, I have, but I think the presentation's still on screen,
Oh,
so
yes.
I don't know if you can see me.
Would you like me to remove that, or would you like me to keep it up for the...
Depends how much they want to see of me, Jamie.
Chair?
Yeah, I'm happy for you to leave that up if everyone's happy with that, Jamie. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair. So I'll begin by reminding members that in 2017, your council did not have an up-to-date local plan and could not provide a 5-year land supply. It's still the opinion of the Parish Council that this application to build on greenfield land, which is outside of the settlement boundary, adjoining the conservation area and home to St Edmund's Monument, would never have been approved if this had been the case. This was clearly a controversial application for which numerous objections were submitted, However, it was not dealt with according to your scheme of delegation, and the original decision to grant outline permission was made by one officer. Whilst having to accept there will wrongly be development on this unique site of great historical interest, the Parish Council remains committed to limiting the harmful impact on the setting of the listed building and the open countryside. To quote one of the Development Control Committee members when this application was last considered in the summer, "This clearly should never have been allowed, but we are where we are." So where are we? The Parish Council has noted the applicant's attempts to try and mitigate the substantial detrimental impact by reducing the scheme to 3 dwellings instead of the 4 large dwellings which were refused by yourselves earlier this year. However, the dwelling at plot 1 in the revised scheme remains too large. The dominance of this dwelling has a ruinous effect on the landscape and obscures the views of the listed monument. Plot 1 has become an isolated element rather than part of a scheme and stands out not only due to its size, but its contrast to the 2 other smaller proposed dwellings. There are many policies this application is contrary to, and we ask that you particularly take into account MPPF 127, which states planning decisions should ensure that developments are sympathetic to local character and history, and 130, which calls for permission to be refused for development of poor design that fails to take the opportunities available for improving the character and quality of the area. The Parish Council asks that you again refuse this scheme due to poor design, dominant scale and appearance, and failure to be sympathetic with the local area and history and the unnecessary loss of a healthy tree. Given the historical significance of the site and concurring with earlier comments made by committee members, the Parish Council is concerned that a full archaeological survey has not been conducted. We ask that you now concur with the Parish Council and vote to refuse this application as currently presented. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Do we have any questions for Sarah, please, from members? Councillor Mansell, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to ask the Parish Council representative, should this planning application be granted approval, are the Parish Council willing to take on the open space provision and the path to get to St Edmund's Monument?
Thank you. I am clerk to the council and not a councillor. I did wonder as the discussion started if I would get asked that question. All I can say is I don't see why not. The Parish Council has got other such similar land that's under its management and ownership, and it's something we would certainly consider. We were very keen to retain the access to the monument, but the wildflower area is a new addition that the Parish Council hasn't actually given specific consideration to.
Thank you, Councillor Mantle. Do we have any more questions for Sarah? Sarah Foot, please. Any more questions? No. Thank you. Then I would now ask the objector to speak, Mr. Rob Marsh-Feely. You have 3 minutes to address the committee, Mr. Marsh-Feely. Could you please turn your camera on, please? Thank you.
Can everybody see me and hear me? I assume so.
Yes, we can see you, Mr. Marsh-Feely. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for listening. Yeah, I think one of the councillors last time asked sort of how many visitors do we get every year. And to be honest, I can't really quantify it. All I know that regularly every weekend we get 4 or 5 visitors. So during the day, I'm obviously not here, so I couldn't tell you how many during the day. But if you take an average of 4 or 5 visitors a day, it's sort of 200 or 300 visitors every year. And they come from all over the world and all over the country. I would ask members to think about the monument. I don't think there's many monuments in the whole of mid-Suffolk, let alone the sort of the wider Suffolk, that has a monument to a national English king and a saint. It's maybe it's lost in time as to where he was martyred, but this is a reference point within a field that people from all over the country come to visit. That enjoyment and appreciation of the monument in its setting is key not only to the village's identity, but to English identity. It's the martyrdom of someone that stood up for their beliefs and was martyred and killed in open space. This development really does impinge on that open space. At the moment, the reduction in size is a benefit, but we still have a development with an isolated property now that's been sort of drawn away from the other side. So it's an isolated property now within the countryside of over 3,500 square feet. It is a huge monstrosity and completely out of keeping, out of character, and in the wider scheme and within sight of the special landscape area, completely inappropriate. The two sort of cottage gatehouse type properties, whilst it's a welcome sort of addition, as an architect I'd probably prefer something a bit more contemporary, but it's a vernacular that is a gatehouse, and by pairing two of the gatehouses together, it's a completely illogical and unwelcome topography of the way architectural should be. If you're going to make a pastiche, make it a decent one, make it appropriate, align it so it appropriately aligns the approach. To put two together with chimneys that are fake is just outrageous and inappropriate, and really destroys any of the architectural sort of integrity of the buildings themselves. And unfortunately, including the loss of the tree.
Excuse me, the time is up actually. Can you please sum up with one sentence, please? Thank you.
I think it's entirely inappropriate, and plot 1 is way too big for its current location.
Thank you very much, Mr. Marsh-Filey. Do we have any questions from members, please, for Mr. Marsh-Filey? Right. Okay. Jamie, you had a question. Did you want to ask a question?
Not a question. I just think it's important to set out that Mr. Rob Marsh-Filey lives opposite.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have any other questions for Mr. Marsh-Filey at all from members? I've got one hand up. I'm just trying. Councillor Field, please.
Yes, just perhaps to ask, you say this is the size of plot 1 is totally inappropriate. How does it compare with other dwellings in the area, or is it completely out of line?
You ask me. In height terms, no, probably not. But in terms of scale of footprint, it certainly is. And one that's isolated in the countryside. Yeah, you've got a good view of my house there. And yes, my house was an original bungalow that's very much like Grasmere, and so I've increased the size substantially, one would argue. So in comparison to my house, yes, it's still larger than my house, so it's still quite a thing in the landscape. I'd like to think I've planted enough trees around mine to not make it quite so prominent, and designed it in a way that is appropriate to its location. I think the problem is this bungalow sits on its own in the middle of a landscape, and will sit out like a sore thumb, personally.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Field. If we have no more questions for Mr. Rob Marsh-Filey from members, no. Thank you, Mr. Rob Marsh-Filey. That's very kind. Thank you very much. I'd like now to ask the agent to speak, Sarah Roberts. Sarah, you have 3 minutes to address the committee, please. I'd be grateful if you could turn on your camera. Thank you.
Good morning. The reason for refusal of the previous reserve matters was all about the design and scale of the houses. Those were the technical reasons for refusal on the notice. There were questions about why there had to be 4 houses when the outline of approval was up to 4. And there were some neighbour comments, particularly from Mr. Marsh-Filey, suggesting that some reference should be made to local historic features within other houses within our new designs. Plot 1 is single story, and it occurs in design to the agricultural buildings, which you can see on some of Jamie's photographs opposite, just at the other end of the public footpath. So in that sense, the single-storey plot 1 will blend in with the landscape. The comments that were received on the previous application have all now been taken into account, and a continued refusal will confirm that the members are voting against the principle of development and seeking to prevent the outline permission being implemented at all. In relation to the open space and footpath, we're open to any required legal or conditional arrangement for the future ownership and management of the land, which can be decided post-approval. It may be that the parish wishes to apply for a formal designation of the path as a public right-of-way as well, which is another option open to them. Final details of preferred arrangements and the land can be subject to a condition. And certainly we would open discussions with the parish council, which don't need to be rushed. The issue of the post and rail fence is optional as well, and the finishing of the footpath, I would see it as a managed green sway that could have some mesh underneath it for winter access, that kind of thing. So we're open to anything. We've received compliments from members of the Hoxne community on the current designs, and the proposal will be low-key and sensitive infill scheme on this. It is an unusual site, we accept that, and if the community wishes to take the control of the, otherwise, if the community doesn't wish to take control of it, then it will be managed, the larger part of it will be managed by a management company for the residents, the immediate residents. There was, I don't think there's any ash dieback, but the ash tree is about a metre in the wrong position for a double entrance, so that will be replaced with another one. So that's
Sorry to interrupt, Sarah. The time is actually up. Can you just sum up in one second?
I'm finished. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. We have questions from Councillor Mansell, please, first.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like some clarification. I'm not sure if Mrs. Roberts is the person to answer the question, but it relates to the footpath. In our recommendations on page 271, it appears that it's a section 106 that will become a public right-of-way, but other parts of the document refer to it as being a permissive path. Could we have some clarity about whether this path will become a public right-of-way, or is it just a permissive path?
There is the process is that a public right-of-way has to be applied for. It's not the planning process can't designate it as a public right-of-way, as I understand it. So, but as I say, we're open to any options on the final designation of the land which is being allocated as the view to the monument.
Perhaps I could also come in there, Chair, if you wouldn't mind.
Sorry, Jamie, yes, would you like to come in, Jamie, please?
Thank you. Yeah, the terms in terms of the permissive path is what's existing. We would be securing this whole area as part of an open space, public open space, and therefore public can cross over this area. As the HRD pointed out, in terms of it becoming a public right of way, that's a separate application that would need to be dealt with by the Suffolk County Council Authority in their area. So the section 106 would grant it as being a public right of way, but it would as an open space for public.
Jamie, it's very, very faint.
Yeah,
we can hardly hear what you're saying. Sorry, could you repeat what you were saying? Because
yes, of course. Apologies, I didn't realise my microphone. I must have moved it up. Apologies. So just like to
shed. So
I'm not in a shed, no. Yeah. So just to reaffirm that, the section 106 will secure this whole area as a public open space. That public open space includes that path, and therefore public can walk across that path. The public making it a public right of way probably would be a good idea, but that is a subsequent application with Suffolk County Council and sits outside of the planning part of it. So the section 106 will control it as a public open space, therefore public can walk across this area. The point of the fence is to try and direct them through here rather than walking on this area here. I would add, in terms of the public benefit part of things, we can only secure it up to this line. There is a section here that is not included, which is in other ownership, and therefore it's up to members to decide how much benefit they provide to that. But securing this area is better than what it currently is as a permissive path, where a farmer could just put a hedge across there and stop people walking.
Can I come back on that, because that to me contradicts item 1 in the recommendation on page 271, which quite clearly has a bullet point that says public right of way. So it's either is a public right of way or it's just a public open space. But I think that maybe that first item on the recommendation needs to be a bit clearer.
No, I agree with that. That's my fault, Councillor Mansell. I think in terms of trying to write a report to say it is a public path would have probably been a better way of doing it, rather than the term public right of way, which obviously conflicts with what is a definition by Suffolk County Council means. Apologies.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mansell. Councillor Stringer, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, obviously we're in quite a sensitive location, given the special landscape area here. Can someone actually confirm to me which design guide we were using to actually include what is essentially fake chimneys? Surely the architectural design here, there should be more integrity than this. So come and explain which design guide we're using for that.
We don't actually have a design guide for Mid Suffolk. I know that the Suffolk Design Guide panel was a thing prior to us going into COVID. I'm not aware of any of those workshops continuing. I know that there was a county-wide design document that was being accumulated, but we haven't seen any drafts of that. We haven't seen anything. So at the moment, there is no design guide. My understanding, and perhaps the agent might be able to answer this better, but the idea of these two houses came as a result of the objections that were submitted on the last application, indicating a particular house in the area that might be of architectural merit that we could look towards using. I have to admit, dealing with an application recently in the Woolpit area, I'm not particularly fond of fake chimneys. However, in this context, we obviously don't want to be using carbon footprints of fireplaces, but at the same time, architectural notes of a chimney itself provides a bit of a traditional character. So I see no harm in doing that.
Thank you. Councillor Field?
So sorry, can I come back on that?
Sorry, yes, sorry.
Obviously, there is a carbon footprint to producing something that's inherently a fake, and it lacks integrity. We may as well just have plastic columns then, and everything else.
If the member felt that they were happy to approve the application without the chimneys, a notwithstanding condition could be put onto the application to remove those.
Thank you. Okay. Do we have any more questions from councillors? Councillor Field?
Yeah, is it a question? I was just going to suggest, perhaps to Jamie, that we could undertake to make the application to Suffolk County Council for the right of way. Since this path has been in use for a number of years, might I suggest that we make that right up to the monument? Because if a path has been used, and I can't remember whether it's 8 years or longer, but if it has been used and you can prove it for a number of years, it doesn't matter what the landowner thinks. To be blunt, you can make it a public right of way.
I have to admit, I'm not rehearsed in public right of way legislation, and therefore I would leave it up to obviously our Suffolk County Council colleagues to make that judgment and what evidence they would require. From a planning perspective, it's different ownership, and therefore our planning control can't look after this area.
We could add a note or something.
Yeah, an informative, definitely. I think that would be an appropriate way forward.
Okay. Do we have any more questions at all for the agent? No. Then I would like to ask the ward member, Councillor Matthew Hicks, to speak, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I think this is the 4th application I've ever called in my 9 years as a district councillor. And the reason for that is due to the impact this has. I think we need to just bear in mind that this is an anciently established village, and it's actually made up of two villages, Heckfield Green and Cross Street. And there is a permissive footpath that runs across the site that's heading to this monument. And this monument, let's not underestimate the importance to nationally, not just locally, but nationally, of what it's remembering. It's remembering that in 869 AD, King Edmund was martyred and rumoured to, or likely to have been actually shot to death with arrows while tied to a tree. So this is really a really historic, important site that is part of the identity of Hoxne and the area. And every year, I don't know if any of you had the opportunity to drive through Hoxne or in the vicinity, but on the 20th of November, local residents certainly did process through the village to commemorate his life, and anyone that would have driven through the area would have seen the flag of St Edmund flying over gateposts, in fact, everywhere, probably competing with the NHS rainbows. So it is, locally, it's extremely important, but I would argue nationally, and to some degree, you could go as far as internationally. So Hoxne is really a clearly well-known, well-represented ancient community, and is very proud of that history. I think just a couple of points I'd like to dwell on is if we look at the reserved matters application, they came forward, the 0588 and the 101717, and you before had an opportunity to look at that and came to a conclusion actually that you weren't satisfied. And you weren't satisfied because basically the design and scale was not appropriate. The architect applicant has just said that if you don't support it, you're going, I think, against the outline planning application. No, I think the reason that one shouldn't support this is because the design, appearance, layout, scale, landscape and quality is not fitting for the location that it's being put in. Just because we have gone away from the last meeting and made changes does not mean it is right. The changes have been done, but in my view are still unacceptable. I have had no positive comments and no positive emails from anyone in the community. I go to parish councils. I do occasionally, when I can, go to the pub, although that has been more difficult, obviously, during lockdown. And I have not had anyone say to me that they see this as a positive influence on the community. I think it's really sad that we have an ash tree that is just being dismissed out of hand. I know if it was an oak tree, there'd be far more action to try and save it. But an ash tree that is healthy is not a frequent occurrence in Mid Suffolk. Certainly around me, unfortunately, there are many ash trees with significant dieback. So I would just ask members to weigh that up when they come to make a consideration. The two proposed accesses, of course, were not what was approved before. That's not what is in the outline planning permission. So I would ask you to weigh up whether moving these is actually changing the application significantly. And I would argue that by taking a tree, impacting a tree, that is changing it very significantly. I'd also ask you to consider around the houses that are being proposed. The lodge cottages, as we've heard them described as, are they fitting for this location? Do they fit in? Or are we urbanizing what is effectively a very rural part of the town? Is it appropriate to have this sort of housing in front of a monument celebrating an ancient location? I would ask members to consider that. In terms of scale, I'd take you to the email that is in the pack from Paul Harrison, who says, in MPPF terms, harm arising from the proposal is reduced from the level resulting from the previous proposal, but is not eliminated. In my view, the improvements in the proposal should be regarded as reducing or avoiding harm, but in heritage terms would not qualify as benefits over and above. So actually, and that could be weighed up in the planning balance. So actually, I don't think we are getting unanimous support from Paul Harrison, our heritage officer, and the paper is for you to read in the pack. So I think I would present that differently to the way the case officer has described that. So the development, in summary, really is one of the most significant sites. It's actually bringing two separate villages together, and is that appropriate in this location? Now, we have an outline, so that is therefore agreed. But what we therefore need to think about is what is appropriate in terms of the built environment, what is appropriate for this location, what is appropriate in terms of scale and size, and what impact does that have on and relevance to this location. So members, this is a difficult one, but I have to say, I think it's really important that we continue to protect, enhance our natural and historic environment. I think the application before us does not do that, and therefore I would ask you to consider about the importance of rejecting this application, because I do believe it contravenes the MPPF, particularly around the environmental objectives, which does talk about contributing and protecting and enhancing our natural built and historic environment. And to me, this does not tick that box. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Councillor Hicks. Do we have any questions for Councillor Hicks, please? Right, we have one hand up, and that is for Councillor Stringer, please. Sorry, Councillor Mayer first. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The board member emphasises how important the monument is. Can you tell me, has the parish council invested any money, assets or time in enhancing that monument, for example, information boards or anything of that kind?
I'm afraid I've only been the member for Hoxne since May, and since then I'm not aware of expenditure, but the parish council I'm sure can answer that, because there will be something, but I couldn't tell you what it's been spent on, having not seen the accounts. But if you want, I'm sure if the parish clerk's online, she could answer that.
I think that would be useful if the parish clerk's there, please.
Yeah, absolutely. If you'd like me to, I'd be more than pleased.
Yes, please. Yeah.
I don't know if Jamie's photo will scale in enough, but each of those wooden posts has got intricate carvings. The wooden post, Jamie, and I don't know if that's an old photo, but each of those 4 posts has got intricate carvings representing elements of the history of St Edmund. That one of them's got an acorn on, one of them's got a dagger on, etc., etc. We talk about money, it's volunteer time, maybe rather than actual physical money going out of the parish council's public funds to maintain the monument. A lot of this is done by volunteer time. Yes, in terms of tourism and representing the history of the site, there's the Hoxne Heritage Walk, which has got information boards. There's an information board at the bottom of the steps on the entrance up to the monument. And there's accompanying leaflets, which you often see people walking around the village with, that are in containers at the village hall car park and in the church. The village hall car park is not far away at all, just down the road beyond the cyclist and on the left. So was it financial commitment from the parish council to the monument, and what it's spent on promoting its heritage, wasn't it? Was that the 2 questions?
Yeah, that's lovely.
Yeah.
It's very useful. Thank you.
Very useful. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. You can see the information board there, Jamie. That's it. Yeah, there.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Sarah.
Okay.
Do you have any sort of other questions, Councillor Mayer? No. Does anybody else have any other questions for Councillor Hicks, please? No. In that case, then we move to debate. Who would like to kick off the debate?
Nobody.
Right, let's look at the list of names. Right, I'm not quite sure who was first. Councillor Mansell, were you?
I wasn't deliberately trying to be first. I was trying to hold off, but nobody else seemed to be willing. I think we're in a very unfortunate position here, because we've got the outline planning permission, which was granted a few years ago for up to 4 dwellings. Now, what I don't particularly like the design of the dwellings that we've got here. I certainly don't like fake chimneys. I'm with Councillor Stringer all the way there. What is the point of making something look like something it's not? These houses are huge. They are big bungalows. Even if the plots 2 and 3 are 2-bedroom bungalows, they are big 2-bedroom bungalows, and they are going to be, significant in the landscape of going to the, when you go to visit the monument. But having said that, I'm not an architect and I have no idea what we would find to be acceptable on this site, and it's already got outline planning permission, and that's what I find quite difficult. This I think is a bit of an improvement. It's certainly better to only have 3 dwellings rather than the 4, but I'm still not convinced that we've got that much benefit. We're losing a tree, and with regards to the open space, I think that's a sort of token in the right direction. If this does get permission, I really hope the parish council can take it on. I think if it is such an important part of the historic, business of Hoxne, I think it would be in their interests to take that on. I'm certainly not convinced by a post and rail fence with the open meadow. I personally, I think I prefer just to see a mown path up there. But of course, I don't come by car, so it hadn't occurred to me that people would park and try and sneak across diagonally from the public right-of-way entrance from the road, because of course I just plonk my bike by the pavement and walk up the path in the middle. And sorry, I wasn't appreciating that, but I really don't know what to think about this. I don't like it, but we've got the outline planning permission, and having listened to the objector, and I think it was the parish council saying that plot 1 sort of is now completely dissociated from the rest of the built environment around there. I tend to agree with that, but then we've got this plot. We want to have the space in the middle so that we can still have view of the monument. We've got up to 4 houses on here. I'm not convinced of how we could get 4 houses on there and not create other problems. So I will listen to what other people say, but I don't particularly like this application. But we are where we are with the outline. Something is going to get built on that site, and is this as good as we're going to get, or should we hold out for something better? I don't know. I'll listen and take on board other people's views.
Thank you, Councillor Mansell. Councillor Matheson, then Councillor Stringer, then Councillor Mayor, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, what I'm asking myself really is, what is an appeal inspector going to say about this? That is the problem, really. Something that's offering a reduction from the outline from 4 to 3, and obviously a considerable reduction in the living square meterage, albeit they're quite big bungalows. Nevertheless, having taken off a top story and so on, it's clearly quite a big reduction. It's I think really quite hard to justify refusal, because it's so hard to envisage what could be done that would respect the fact that there is an outline permission for up to 4. It is extraordinarily difficult to see your way around that, really. I think as far as the tree's concerned, I've lost it. Oh, okay, sorry, it's come back. Yeah, as far as the tree's concerned, the canopy spread and therefore the root spread of the tree that was there, if you then apply that spread in due course, the roots are going to go underneath the driveway anyway in due course. So I just wonder what the point of cutting the tree down actually is. It's hard to see. I don't know quite whether it's highways or who it is that says that in order to achieve a 2-dwelling access, it needs to be that wide and the tree's got to go. I don't know where the requirement for that is actually coming from. And as I say, if you put another tree in its place so close, it'll finish up nearly the same, which might be nice in one way, but in another way, what was the point of cutting the first one down, really? So I think it's difficult to refuse. So let's hear what others have got to say for a bit.
Thank you, Councillor Mather. Could I just bring in Jamie, please, just before Councillor Stringer?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, two things I just wanted to put in there. Firstly, Councillor Matheson, just in regards to their access, for it to serve one plot, it needs to be 3.5 metres wide. For it to serve two, 4.5 from memory. So, yeah, the wider one would encroach right on that trunk of that tree, and hence it needs to be, if it is approved and we have one access serving the two plots, it needs to come out to be able to accommodate that. In regards to, this is not necessarily a material consideration, but I think it's a good idea for councillors to be aware. The outline application has run out. The application for reserve matters was validated 2 days before. If this application is refused, they cannot resubmit an application for reserve matters. However, both the scheme that was refused in August and this scheme can both be appealed and simultaneously.
Jamie, just to check, when did it expire with the new extensions to May next year? Don't forget.
That's very true. Apologies. Thank you, Gemma. So yes, it would actually go up to March. Is it the 31st, Gemma?
1st of May, I think, next year.
1st of May, apologies. Yes, no, it would. That's 100% correct. Because of the new extensions due to the COVID, any extant planning permissions did get an extension as per the government guidelines. So, yeah, apologies. I stand corrected.
That's fine. I only because we happened to cross over that in training yesterday made me think. So, no problem.
Okay, thank you, Jamie. Councillor Stringer, Councillor Mayer, then Councillor Field, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is indeed another one that's incredibly knotty and twisty. So what I tend to do is go back to first principles to try and get some clarity. We have a site that has an outline approval. We have a site that has a refusal that's within a time limit for appeal. And we have a second go at this. We also have a site that's inside the draft joint local plan and the second draft joint local plan. So the likelihood of development on this site is relatively strong. So where we're into then is design and consequences and what it is that we're trying to achieve. I really, really wish we could roll back time to when we had a 5-year land supply and the consequences of not having one weren't wreaked on our countryside. But we can't do that here. What I need to try and do is do as best as I can do to do justice to the history of the site. So when we look at the history of the site, we have a monument to a fallen tree. And I think what we don't want to do now is have a load of houses that are a monument to a fallen tree. The monument we have there at the moment, I believe, is 1908 because the original one got damaged. It's actually ironically got the wrong date on it, but never mind. It was 1848, I believe, that the oak tree fell. Anyway, doesn't matter. Although history is very important, I think we have a permission that says up to 4 houses. We had a very inappropriate development which we refused, which could still be appealed. We now have another proposal here, which frankly, I still think's barking up the wrong tree design-wise. But of course, the outline didn't help us because it didn't say thou shalt build a contemporary-looking design or a pastiche or whatever it said. We are also we've got a mixture of houses around it that don't have a clearly defined type. We've got everything from almost sort of local authority housing to ancient thatched housing to bungalows as well. So it's not that clear. So from my mind, I'm actually still quite torn about this because my fear is if this is refused, we will end up with an appeal on both of them, and we could then end up with the really inappropriate one. We could approve this one, of course, and still get an appeal on the original 4. So I have to say I'm in a real bind here because I don't think this is good enough. I also think the scale of it is also something quite interesting. If you impose minimum space standards, one bungalow alone on this site could be the same footprint as 3 3-bedroom terraced houses. So these are quite good. But then something in a wonderful historic landscape probably should have a very luxurious house. So there is that tear, and I really have not made my mind up. Do I think this is good enough for me to approve? No. Is it bad enough for me to refuse? Not sure. Sorry, I can't be any more help, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stringer. Councillor Mayor, please.
Thanks, Chair. It's better, but is it good enough? For me, there are 4 issues here. Firstly, plot 1. Council believe it is a very large house. The objector believes it's too large, and yet we've got Suffolk Preservation that are happy to accept it. Then we can move down to design. Well, for me, the biggest part of poor design is the fact that the access to the monument is so poor. We have an open space that you can't walk across. You have to use a footpath. You can't, and yet there are other access points that won't link together, that don't link together. So for me, the poor design is actually that the monument hasn't taken pride of place. Design access to the monument and then add the buildings on top. I don't think that's the case. The tree, yes, it will be a sad loss, but if it keeps the access down to manageable configuration, then I'd accept that. And the fake chimneys, well, I think the less said about those, the better. They don't add any value and really have no part in a good scheme going forward. I was very interested to hear what Councillor Stringer said, and we are on the horns of a dilemma. We used that in a previous application, but do we approve something because it's better? I'm inclined to stick to your guns and say no. The design around access to the monument is not good enough, and that for me is enough to say that I don't think I will be supporting this scheme.
Thank you, Councillor Mayor. Councillor Field, please.
Yes, I think Councillor Stringer did a good analysis. One's question really is, could we get anything better? We have a bit of a history at the moment of rejecting things and finding a scheme that actually improves with time. But I have to say, I don't find this particularly unacceptable. It does give access to a monument. As Councillor Stringer said, a monument that dates back all the way to 1840, not quite all the way back to St Edmunds, because I believe, if I read correctly, that the abbey that used to exist around Hoxne didn't actually accept that he was killed in this area. But nevertheless, it's a monument, it's there, it's been there for 100 or so years. And it obviously attracts tourists, so it's perhaps worth preserving. We are improving access to it. We can have a public right of way. You might even extend that all the way to the monument itself, and certainly there's a public open space, which is a benefit. When I look at the houses, certainly it's an improvement on the previous scheme. The two are fairly small. Totally agree with the point that plastic chimneys aren't appropriate, but the house designs are reasonable in their context. The larger one, I'm not convinced it's that amount bigger than the objector's dwelling, and I personally don't feel a moral need to ensure houses are always smaller than my own, or whatever the criteria is that people tend to use. You need a variety of house sizes to support an active economy. Some for people in basic jobs, some for their leaders. So having a variety of house size seems appropriate and suitable to the economy. So we do retain visual contact with the monument, not from everywhere, but it seems to be very similar to what it is at the moment. So I think on balance, I'm in favour of this scheme, with slight thoughts that could we achieve something even better if we tried. I'm inclined to think the answer to that's probably not. So I'm, yeah, sort of in favour, I guess.
Thank you, Councillor Field. Councillor Haddingham, please.
Thank you. Frankly, I agree with almost everything that everyone said earlier. This is a really tricky one. I'd say it definitely is an improvement on the last one. But what I don't really like is the fact that site one does cut from what I feel is the best view. As you come before this corner where Jamie basically said we're losing this view, but we've still got this one. I feel that you're more on the corner. If you are in the car, by the time you get into the corner, you're looking at the road rather than thinking where's the monument. And so I feel that you are losing what probably is the best view. But like I said, it is an improvement. But like Matthew, I took that Paul Harrison was not sort of saying, oh, yes, now it's brilliant, no harm. He was definitely saying the harm is reduced, but not eliminated. And yet, like Rick says, the Suffolk Preservation Society seem to think it's OK. And so, you know, we are in a bind here, people. And like we've all said, you know, we don't like it, but have we got enough to refuse it? So, yeah, I'm stuck. Thanks.
OK. Thank you, Councillor Haddingham. Councillor Mayor, did you wish to come back, please?
Just a question, really. I mean, much of my concern about the design, about access to the monument, will be alleviated if the post and rail fence were removed from the path, and then the path actually split into three, so that you could actually enter the site through any of the driveways or the bottom of the path. Is that something we could condition?
Jamie, could you come in there, please?
Yes, of course. I think in terms of the existing circumstances on site, the route from here to here is technically the only route that should be taken to the monument. I think because of the low scale area here and people parking here, I think people are just walking across there. I would be concerned of asking pedestrians to use those sites. However, I do hear that if we just took this post and rail out, it means that people aren't contained within a path. The risk there is, do they come up the stairs and walk all across here? Well, if we're going to have it as a public open space, why can't they? I guess I was trying to protect the area as a wildflower designation, or not designation, but a wildflower meadow, so we didn't have people trampling across flowers that we're trying to grow and enhance kind of, you know, bees coming to the area and things like that. But yeah, I'm open to that. I think the developer would be as well, a notwithstanding condition to remove this post and rail, and perhaps a close bordered fence in this area here might be appropriate too to add on. But yeah, I don't see any issues in removing that post and rail as part of a notwithstanding condition.
OK, thank you, Jamie. Councillor May, did you wish to come back on that at all?
No, thank you.
No, thank you. OK, Lavinia, do you have it? Oh, no, everyone's. I'd like to make a few comments myself, if I may, please. I think, Councillor Haddingham, you made a very good point about what the Suffolk Preservation Society says, and paragraph 8.18 clarifies that, and I quote, "Going further, the Suffolk Preservation Society consider that the new scheme, by the adoption of a strong landscape-led layout, the reduction in dwellings from 4 to 3, securing views to the monument and introduction of an open space with meadow-style planting will cumulatively enhance the setting of the heritage asset." And the other comment that I particularly picked up on was on page 256. And I quote again, "Design treatment of units 2 and 3 now relates to the design of the single-storey lodge buildings associated with the former Oakley Park / Hoxne Hall, which stand just outside Hoxne on approach roads. In my view," this is obviously the planning officer's view, "in my view, this design treatment will contribute to local distinctiveness. The design treatment of Unit 1 uses a range of materials and forms familiar in agricultural buildings within the district. However," he goes on to say, "I believe the proposed layout will not answer members' concerns about the opportunity to appreciate the monument as approached along Abbey Hill to the northwest of the site, as Unit 1 is likely to foil views at several points, with a clear view only becoming available near the access to Down Bridge." So at the moment, I must admit, I am still sort of sitting on the fence on this one. It is a really sort of complicated application. We've heard some very good views on that. I would just like to open it up to members again for any further comments, or whether somebody wishes to propose the application and second it. Councillor Matheson, please.
Yeah, I think I'm actually going to propose approval, having heard what Office have said about the risks of appeals and what Suffolk Preservation Society have said. I mean, I cannot see how I mean, I understand that the point about the two settlements and the fact that plot number 1 is doing its best to actually bring those two together. But unfortunately, I can't see any way in which one could put more than 2 dwellings onto the other half of this site and leave that side of the site empty of development. You know, desirable as that might be, we would, you know, we would lose that appeal if we tried to reduce it to 2 or whatever. So I can't see, you know, I think that it's better to take this one, and then probably the applicant won't want to try and appeal the horrible one that we refused already. So you know, it's the least worst way forward, really. Propose approval.
Thank you very much, Councillor Matheson. Councillor Field, please.
I'd be happy to second that. I think, if happy is the right word. I certainly am inclined to say, even looking at that photo of the monument, it's pretty remote. I would have suggested that the important thing is where you can sort of walk up and contemplate the monument and think of the issues that occurred in ancient history and how primitive things were at that time. So yeah, I think Councillor Matheson analysed it properly. I'll stop there, but I'll second it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Field. Councillor Stringer, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Now we have a proposal. Could I ask the proposer and seconder to consider, despite the design queue, removing those fake chimneys and actually exploring? I hear what the officer was saying. He didn't want he wanted the entrance, the walking entrance, and the car entrance to be quite distinct. But of course, we then lose a perfectly good tree. I really don't see how we couldn't actually join all of those 3 entrances together to form a decent entrance. Yes, you'll have a confluence of cars and pedestrians, but you know, I'm sure a few people at the weekend can avoid whatever cars are going to be coming in and out of here, where then you could actually save the tree. I really think we should explore all avenues to save that tree. If it means that we have either a slightly substandard entrance or that we join those together to avoid losing it, I think we should pursue that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Jamie, would you like to come back in again, please?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Whilst I'm confident that we can get away with the chimneys and the post and rail fencing via condition, based on the type of application that we're looking at, and I don't see that we'd be able to approve an application and condition it to say that the accesses need to be changed and the pedestrian access to amalgamate into one, or an alternative solution for them to come up with. I think that if that was a real sticking point, it would need to be down as a reason for refusal, and the application refused, and for them to come back in and readdress that. I don't think that would be reasonable to condition such a thing in that instance.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Matheson, please.
Yeah, I'm interested in what Councillor Stringer is saying there. Would that be then that we put the 3 entrances basically where the steps are at the moment, and lower the view, you know, the bank that the steps go up, so, and then the 2 driveways diverge? Is that the sort of thing you're talking about? I mean, I can see the point of it, and as I've said already, that the removal of the tree is pretty farcical, really.
I think if you wouldn't mind, Chair, if I just provide a little bit more detail. The steps are currently located here, exactly where that path is, right at the bottom here. So I think if we had accumulated an access that came into here and an access that came into here, and we opened this right up, so we've got an access for both cars and pedestrians, I think this ash tree is going to have to go. So those accesses and the path are all going to have to come round into this access here. I have to admit that I wrote in my report that I think the real unveiling of this monument, where it's dead in front of you, is when you get to the top of those stairs. And I think changing this pedestrian access here, in my eyes, would not be a good thing to do in terms of the unveiling of that monument. And again, I will reiterate that if we want to have a look at changing these accesses and have it amalgamated, we need to have that as a reason for refusal and go back to the drawing board, which they have that extension until May to do so. But yeah, I'll leave that up to the rest of the debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor Field, please.
As I say, I think that argument from Jamie holds a lot of water. I did, as I stopped talking, realise that I'd failed to say anything about the post and rail fences, which I certainly think should go. As to the ash tree, trees are valuable, they exist, like the one that St Edmunds was tied to. They do disappear in time, and planting new ones ensures that we have a continuation for a long period. I therefore feel that I'm not that concerned about taking down an ash, which does suffer from ash dieback now, and replacing it. So yeah, I'll go with the removal of the plastic chimneys. I think so. Plastic chimneys and posts and rails are out. Replacement trees, I personally find fairly relaxed about.
Thank you very much. Councillor Matheson, please.
Yeah, yeah. As the proposer, could I perhaps just run through the adjustments that we've got to the recommendation as far as I can see at the moment? The first one was to amend the 106 so that it's talking about the public path that leads through the site towards the monument or something like that. Yep. And then that we're not having those fences, and we're not having any extra stories stuck on the bungalows, and we're not having any plastic chimneys. And if Councillor Fields were agreeable on all that lot.
Thank you, Councillor.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Therefore, if we've got no other comments from members, can I now ask the Chief Planning Officer, Area Planning Manager, to read out the proposal on the table before we go to a vote, please? Over to you, Gemma.
Thank you.
Gemma, sorry, apologies to interrupt. Can I just state it was a bit of an afterthought when there was lots of conversation about fencing. This particular area of fencing here is close boarded, and perhaps being in the street scene might be considered a bit of an urbanisation here, and perhaps this should be seen as an extra condition to remove this and have it as a hedgerow instead of close boarded fencing, but only because of the amount of conversation around fencing that's taken place. I thought I would put that forward, which, as I said earlier.
Well, so far I suggest that we, it's very much a bullet point, so Jamie, you can take that away and sort out the wording, but that I would suggest, so we've got the recommendations, it stands on page 271 to 272, and then the addition of conditions, so details of the path surface to be agreed, with removal of the fencing along the permissive pathway, and I'll add and details to be agreed, so that leaves it open to Jamie, if you can agree on a replacement for that close boarded fencing, or if it still needs some degree of fencing, we've got that option to go away and work on that under the condition. Then we'd remove permitted development rights under class AA for additional stories. I take it that was the only PD we were looking at removing, so that's what I've suggested. Then notwithstanding the details submitted, the chimneys are not included on the approval. And finally, yes, the section 106 that mentions public right of way should in fact state public open space and pathway rather than right of way. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, could I just ask officers, what's the purpose of the close boarded fence on plot 2?
It's to provide screening, obviously, to their rear garden area in terms of an amenity.
I see. Privacy. Yeah. So a hedge would do just as well.
Yes, I mean, it would take a little bit longer to form, but yes, I would agree. A hedgerow here would probably be more appropriate in terms of the street scene setting.
Okay, well, I'd agree with that then if Councillor Field agrees with that.
Totally. This is not an area where you're going to get shed loads of pedestrians gazing in, so there's time, I would suggest, for a hedge to grow.
Okay, Thank you very much indeed, everybody. I will now ask the governance officer to conduct the roll call vote or the electronic vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. So if members could please go to the modern.gov app and in the same way as previously go to the voting tab under the plus sign, where I will now start the vote. Thank you, members. So I can confirm that the vote is 6 votes for with 1 against. So that is carried.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. The final question, do any site inspection requests need to be reported to the committee?
No, Chair.
No, thank you very much. In that case, I'd like to thank everyone that's taken part in this morning's debates on the 3 applications we've decided, and I therefore close the meeting at 13:20.